Chapter 859. Gong Che's red eyes made Gong Yimo feel even more ashamed. Her eyes flickered as she looked away and said in a muffled voice, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I'll listen to you in the future, okay? Why do you want to leave me?" Unfortunately, Gong Che did not listen to her at all. Some negative and dark emotions took advantage of the situation and made his eyes turn even redder. He hugged Gong Yimo even tighter. "Don't even think about leaving me in this lifetime." That terrifying possessiveness made Gong Yimo tremble. She hugged Gong Che back with one hand and said pitifully, "I won't leave you." She did not expect that her words would actually make Gong Che glare at her angrily. He looked at her and suddenly said faintly, "Perhaps you'll only be obedient if I lock you up." His words made Gong Yimo stunned. She really did not like to be imprisoned or tied up. Gong Che narrowed his eyes. Those scarlet eyes were very dangerous as they locked onto her. He did not look like he was joking at all. "I should cripple your martial arts and lock you up with me. This way, you won't be able to run away." Gong Yimo saw that he was becoming more and more demonic and could not help but become serious. "Gong Che, I don't have the intention to leave you." You do." Gong Che suddenly frowned and said irritably. He arched his body and completely pressed Gong Yimo into his territory. Those demonic red eyes stared at her aggressively. His gaze slowly moved down from her neck. She seemed to have become his most delicious prey. She had nowhere to run, even if she wanted to. "You want to leave me. You want to find someone else. You don't like me. You never said that you liked me." He pressed harder and harder. The hatred and jealousy in his eyes seemed to have materialized. "Why don't you like me? I clearly love you so much." That kind of danger followed him like a shadow. But his voice gradually became filled with sorrow. That tense body seemed to be enduring some kind of great pain. He looked at you just like that. Even though he was right in front of you, you felt like you were in hell. Gong Yimo looked at him with her eyebrows tightly knitted together. She didn't understand why Gong Che would have such an expression. It was as if he had experienced endless despair, as if he had stepped into eternal damnation. In short, he shouldn't be like this. Gong Yimo gritted her teeth, grabbed his hand, and placed it on her chest. She slowly said, "Didn't I say that I like you?" Gong Che looked at her in confusion. Gong Yimo suddenly smiled. Grabbing his hand, she slowly unbuttoned her clothes. Her fair collarbone was gradually revealed, causing Gong Che's Adam's apple to move. His gaze was glued to her fair skin. "Forget it. It's pointless to say what you like. You said that I don't like you and want to leave you. How about I give you my body and let you experience it for yourself? Do I like you or not?" With a blink of her eyes, she suddenly turned into a soul-sucking seductress. Gong Che was still immersed in endless negative emotions, but Gong Yimo's words were like a hook that pulled him out. He couldn't help but straighten his body and take a step back. Looking at the seductress that was wantonly blooming on the bed, his mind went blank. He didn't understand why things had suddenly turned out like this. Gong Yimo slightly curled her lips and slowly got up. Her neck arched beautifully, and her incomparably seductive lips gently rubbed against Gong Che's thin lips. His body trembled, and he looked down. The moment he regained his senses, he saw the seductress in front of him who seemed to want to suck out his essence. His Adam's apple kept moving. He felt like he was pulled out of a whirlpool and then fell into another one. "If I give you my body, will you believe my feelings for you?" Gong Yimo looked up into his eyes with a smile that wasn't a smile. "If you want it, you can take it, Imo." Gong Che couldn't control himself anymore. He bent down and hugged Gong Yimo. He frowned painfully. I'm sorry, Imo, I didn't mean to scare you. I was just too scared just now." Gong Yimo said softly, "I thought you'd be happy. I stole the water cloud grass. I thought you would be touched." Feeling Gong Yimo's body tremble slightly, Gong Che blamed himself even more. "I'm sorry," he closed his eyes. "I'd rather not have the water cloud grass than bear the risk of you leaving me. Imo, you're too important to me. You'll never understand how much I love you." His feelings seemed to have been twisted. His possessiveness towards Imo had reached a terrifying level, but he couldn't control himself. and he didn't want to control himself. Gong Yimo felt his uneasiness and was a little scared. But no matter what, his feelings for her couldn't be faked. That was enough. Moreover, strictly speaking, she was in the wrong in the first place. After a long silence, Gong Yimo pouted and said with grievance, "You scare me just now." She puffed up her cheeks and hit Gong Che. She was like a little punching bag. Her face was proud and timid, and her lips were pouted high. Gong Che also realized that he was being too unreasonable. He hurriedly coaxed her. His expression was unbelievably gentle, as if he wanted to melt her in his arms. Gong Yimo let him coax her for a long time before she proudly raised her chin and took out the water cloud grass from her space. "Here, I got it. It's not that difficult. You're making a mountain out of a molehill." She purposely exaggerated her abilities, as if saying, "Hurry up and praise me. If you praise me, I'll forgive you." Gong Che's expression was complicated. In his previous life, it was also Immerse who personally handed him the water cloud grass. Could this be fate? Gong Che didn't say anything. Gong Yimo glanced at him and couldn't help but ask, "Is this enough to treat your illness?" Not enough. But Gong Che didn't intend to tell her. He sighed. "Imo, I have my own reasons for helping that person. It's not completely controlled by the water cloud grass." Gong Yimo didn't understand. Why? "He's just using you." Gong Che touched her face. "Silly girl, don't you want to go out and have fun? If the country isn't stable, how can there be a small family? I just hope that when you go out, you can be more at ease. This is also my responsibility as a prince. Anyway, I will solve this matter properly. Imo, promise me, don't take any more risks." Gong Yimo suddenly had an epiphany. "You've asked me not to interfere a few times. Are you afraid that I'll be in danger? Or are you afraid that I'll meet someone?" She obviously didn't want to ask, but this feeling was getting stronger and stronger, and she couldn't ignore it. "That person is Gong Dai. Imoa." Gong Che suddenly raised his voice. He looked at Gong Yimo sternly, but since Imo felt it, he didn't have to hide it anymore. "Imo, promise me that you'll never see him again, all right?" Chapter 860. Gong Yimo was shocked when she heard him raise his voice all of a sudden. Who would have thought that it was really because of one person? Gong Che saw that Gong Yimo wasn't speaking, so he emphasized again. "Imo, you can do whatever you want, but don't go and see him, okay? I'm begging you." "But why?" Gong Yimo asked curiously. She really couldn't understand. Could it be that she had some sort of interaction with that person? "There's no why." Gong Che gasped for air. He grabbed Gong Yimo's hand tightly and kept saying, "Don't see him, don't see him," but his face was getting paler and paler. Large beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. In an instant, he looked like he had just been fished out of the water. "Oh no, Gong Che's illness is acting up." Gong Yimo was shocked. She had never seen Gong Che's illness act up before. His illness was cyclical, and it rarely acted up suddenly. Today, it was only because his emotions were fluctuating too much that he became like this. "Where's the medicine? Where's your medicine?" Gong Che pointed at his chest painfully. Gong Yimo hurriedly found a small bottle in his arms and poured out a pill for him to take. After taking the medicine, Gong Che didn't recover immediately. He was still very uncomfortable. His face was pale, and his lips were pale. Gong Yimo hurriedly wiped his sweat, but Gong Che grabbed her hand. "Imoa, don't see him." Seeing that he was still thinking about this matter, Gong Yimo hurriedly said, "Okay, I won't see him. In the future, I'll run when he appears. Okay? Don't talk anymore." Gong Che closed his eyes in pain. He knew that he was being selfish, but he couldn't control his desires. Once, he desired her so much that he was willing to share her with Gong Dai. But that was his bottom line when he was pushed to the limit. He even felt that if Immerse took one more look at him and was willing to give him a chance, she would definitely discover who was the most suitable person for her. But now, she was already his. He would be crazy to give others a chance. "Immerse," his voice was barely audible. "I'm sorry." His heart was filled with guilt, and he didn't even dare to look at her. Gong Yimo sighed and wiped away all the beads of sweat on his forehead. "Silly, we are husband and wife, No matter what the reason was, he would never harm her. Gongche's expression became a little better. That's right, they were husband and wife. After resting for a while, Gongche's breathing became much smoother. However, he lay on the bed with his black hair spread out and his face pale. He looked like a decadent glazed doll with a fragile beauty. Gong Yimo saw that he was not so uncomfortable and also breathed a sigh of relief. Looking out of the window, it was already dawn. Gongche suddenly rubbed his head against her thigh and said softly, "Thank you, Immerse." Gong Yimo was a little confused. Thank me for what? Gongche narrowed his eyes and looked at her exposed wound. A trace of pain flashed past his eyes. I know what you did for me. I like it very much. Gong Yimo was stunned. Gongche gradually became exhausted. He closed his eyes and frowned, but the corners of his mouth slowly curved up. You did everything for me. I'm so happy and satisfied. Thank you, Immerse. Gong Yimo then snorted proudly. Her dangerous actions last night were not in vain. His words were enough. As long as you know that I'm good to you, you have to be good to me in the future, okay? However, Gongche did not reply. Gong Yimo looked down and saw that he had fallen asleep quietly with his forehead resting on her thigh. Gong Yimo could not help but laugh. She sat and looked at Gongche's sleeping face. She also felt sleepy. Fortunately, the bed was very big. She lay back and both of them slept well. After this incident, their relationship became even better. They were so sweet and affectionate that they could torture each other at any time. However, how could the other princes let Gongche live so well? With Gong Dai's strong support and the emperor's nurturing, Gongche displayed extraordinary talent and ability. His power was at its peak. If this continued, the throne would belong to the crown prince. Seeing that the emperor's body was getting weaker by the day, everyone was anxious. They thought of more sinister ways to harm him again and again. On this day, Gong Yimo was having her meal in the Eastern Palace. She saw the head eunuch of the Eastern Palace, Difu, rushing over. Not good, madam, because Gongche had ordered everyone to call her Madam Gong Yimo. What's wrong? Gong Yimo looked up and saw the gloomy weather outside the window. She suddenly felt a little depressed. Difu knelt in front of Gong Yimo with an ugly expression. Someone tampered with His Majesty's medicine. That person framed His Highness the Crown Prince. He also said that His Majesty's illness was not good because of the Crown Prince's medicine. Also, poison was found on the Crown Prince. Gong Yimo stood up and said anxiously, "Then where's the Crown Prince now?" Difu said with a sad face, "His Highness is temporarily detained. His Highness was afraid that you would be worried, so he secretly sent a message to tell you not to be afraid. However, His Majesty sent the Imperial Dragon Guards to personally investigate. They will come to the Eastern Palace to search later." After he said this, Gong Yimo instantly understood. This was clearly a trap. There must be something in the Eastern Palace that violated the rules. And Gongche could still send a message. Clearly, there was no need to worry for the time being. At this moment, there was a commotion outside. It must be the Imperial Dragon Guards. Gong Yimo rolled her eyes and said a few words to the panicking Difu. Difu did not know what she wanted to do, but he still obeyed her orders and blocked the Imperial Dragon Guards at the door. "Move aside. We are following His Majesty's orders to thoroughly investigate the Eastern Palace. Are you going to defy His Majesty's orders?" Difu's legs trembled, but he said firmly, "Young priest, His Majesty meant for the Imperial Dragon Guards to investigate this matter. He did not say for you to search the residence. Is the Eastern Palace a place you can barge into just because you want to?" The Imperial Dragon Guards were a little hesitant. However, they had to investigate the Eastern Palace if the Emperor ordered them to enter the mountain. Difu quickly said, "How about this? The Crown Prince's bedroom is right in front. There are women folk inside. Just send 2 people in to search. If so many people go in and disturb the future Crown Princess, can you bear the responsibility?" This was not a bad idea. They had long heard that the Crown Prince had a mistress in his golden house. That person must be the future Crown Princess. Today's matter had not been settled yet. They did not want to make things too tense. This was a good idea. Thus, 2 people from the Imperial Dragon Guards walked out to search. Defu heaved a sigh of relief and only let the 2 people in. He stayed at the door to guard the remaining people. After the 2 people entered, they revealed strange smiles. Seeing that there was no one in the courtyard, they ran in a direction. Gong Yimo hid in the dark and clearly saw that they pulled something out of the dry well. When the cloth bag was opened, it was indeed a dragon robe. The 2 people were overjoyed and shouted, "Young priest, we found something." The people outside heard their voices from afar. Ignoring Defu's attempts to stop them, they forced their way in. Gong Yimo also walked out at the right time. Looking at the 2 people, she smiled. Chapter 861. Seeing that the intruder was a woman, the 2 men relaxed. Gong Yimo pretended to be panicked and reached out to snatch the things in their hands. "What are you holding?" They wanted to avoid it at first, but after thinking about it, wouldn't they be caught red-handed if the things were in the hands of the Crown Prince's people? While they were distracted, Gong Yimo easily snatched the things in their hands. Only then did they relax. Gong Yimo seemed to know martial arts. Before they could make a move, the Imperial Dragon Guards rushed in. After seeing the head of the Imperial Dragon Guards, Li Shaoxi, their eyes lit up and they quickly went forward to report. "Shaoxi, we found a dragon robe." Li Shaoxi was shocked. "What? Where's the dragon robe?" What they didn't know was that the moment they turned around, the dragon robe that Gong Yimo snatched was gone. Although the bundle in her hands was still bulging, the contents were different. The dragon robe is in her hands. Everyone looked over. Gong Yimo looked frightened and stepped back. "No, I'm holding my own clothes, not the dragon robe." Seeing Gong Yimo like this, the 2 men sneered. "Nonsense, you're clearly holding the dragon robe. Just now we saw you sneaking around and wanted to throw something into the well. Do you dare to open it and see?" Gong Yimo pursed her lips. "You were the ones who wanted to molest me. I'm a future Crown Prince's wife. How dare you?" Hearing her identity, the 2 men were even more delighted. Now, they could finally prove the Crown Prince's crime. Defu ran over and saw that Gong Yimo was surrounded. How could he? "What are you doing?" "Madam is the future Crown Prince's wife. Are you being disrespectful?" Shaoxi said awkwardly. "My 2 subordinates said that she was holding the dragon robe. That's impossible." Defu led the Eastern Palace Guards and stood in front of Gong Yimo. The Crown Prince had warned them repeatedly that no matter what happened, they couldn't let anything happen to Madam. Gong Yimo stopped Defu and said softly, "Why do you believe their words and doubt me?" Shaoxi knitted her eyebrows. Gong Yimo continued, "Or if I didn't have the dragon robe in my hands and they took advantage of me, and you questioned me, how would the Imperial Dragon Guards deal with it?" Her serious words made Li Shaoxi hesitate. At this time, the 2 men patted their chests and said, "Shaoxi, don't be fooled by her. We opened a corner of that bag with our own hands, and we're sure it's a dragon robe." "Really?" Li Shaoxi lowered his voice and asked. "Absolutely." Gong Yimo sneered. "What if I'm not?" Li Shaoxi said with a cold face. "If not, I'll leave these 2 to you." Gong Yimo snorted. "My reputation as the future Crown Princess is really worthless. If you slander me, you, young priest, must promise me one thing. Otherwise, we will report this matter to His Majesty." Although Defu didn't know what Gong Yimo was going to do, he still tried his best to persuade her. "The Eastern Palace is not a place for you to behave atrociously. If you slander Madam, the Eastern Palace will not let this matter go." Shaoxi hesitated for a while, but seeing that the 2 men beside her looked very confident, she nodded in the end. "Please open the bag." Gong Yimo smiled and suddenly threw the bag into his hands. "See for yourself." Shaoxi took it, and under everyone's expectant gazes, he opened the loose knot, revealing several black and red clothes. He was shocked and took one out to open it, only to find that it was a woman's dress. Gong Yimo said faintly, "Isn't the dragon robe yellow? I'm just taking care of a few unwanted clothes, and you say it's the dragon robe. You shouldn't find such an excuse to bully a weak woman like me." The 2 men were stunned. How could this be? The bag was in her hands for a while, but the dragon robe disappeared? "Young priest, this shouldn't be. We clearly saw that it was the dragon robe." Gong Yimo showed an angry expression. Just now, you only cared about taking advantage of me. How could you see what was in my bag? Young priest, you should owe me now, right? Hearing this, the two men couldn't stand it anymore. They approached Gong Yimo fiercely, looking like they wanted to search her body. Where did you hide the dragon robe? Hand it over. Gong Yimo took a few steps back, and DeFu and his men pushed them away. He said loudly, "What are you doing? His Highness the Crown Prince isn't here, so you can do whatever you want and accuse a deer as a horse." Enough. Shaoxi frowned and ordered his men to leave. Except for a well and a few trees, there was nothing here. It was unreasonable to say that she hid it. But the two men couldn't say anything. The dragon robe was clearly in her hands. Gong Yimo said faintly, "All right, the truth is out. Young priest, now you know who's right and who's wrong, right? We had an agreement just now. In front of so many people, you want to go back on your words?" Shaoxi was in a difficult position. Seeing that the two men still wanted to say something, he impatiently grabbed them and gestured for Gong Yimo to step aside to talk. Gong Yimo gladly accepted. "Young priest, these two men were agreed to be handed over to the East Palace," Li Shaoxi said hesitantly. "The Imperial Dragon Guards can't be handed over to others. But I will definitely investigate them carefully and give you an explanation." Gong Yimo raised her eyebrows slightly. "So you want to go back on your words?" Li Shaoxi thought for a moment. "I can help you with one thing. I hope you can be merciful. After all, something happened to his men, and it was no small matter that the Emperor was involved." Gong Yimo smiled. "All right, I want you to take me to see the Crown Prince." Shaoxi was in a difficult position, but now that someone had something on her, she agreed after thinking for a while. In the prison, Gong Dai was still dressed in black. What was different was that he was carrying a sword today. His entire person was exuding a murderous aura, awe-inspiring and inviolable. Now that father is sick and you're in prison, everyone is ready to make a move. This prince just received news that the crown prince is gathering people to force you to make a move. This way, they can bring soldiers into the city in the name of saving the emperor. Even in the prison, Gong Che was still dressed in white. His gentle face had a hint of seriousness. "I know. Just do what you need to do. They want to attack me and force me to make a move. It's not that simple." The current situation was that they wanted the crown prince to make a move and prove that he plotted to murder the emperor, so as to clean up the emperor's subordinates. Gong Dai and Gong Che decided to beat them at their own game. Now that everyone's attention and attacks were focused on Gong Che, Gong Dai could do a lot of things. As the saying goes, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Chapter 862. Gong Dai smiled. "Don't let your guard down. I heard that the emperor sent the Imperial Dragon Guards to the Eastern Palace. The Eastern Palace was not as tightly guarded as it is now. Perhaps someone buried something terrible there. If they really dig it up, you'll have to do something." If Gong Dai had said something else, Gong Che might have been worried. But the Eastern Palace. Immerse, it was in the Eastern Palace. Gong Che did not think that with Immerse there, those people could do anything. If things did not work out, he had a backup plan. He would not be easily defeated. But if he was suddenly locked up, would Immerse be worried? Gong Che pondered for a moment, then suddenly said, "My people are getting more and more restricted. Nothing else matters but the Eastern Palace. You must help me look after it. Don't let anyone be in danger." Gong Dai looked at him with a faint smile. Gong Che was in the most danger now. If he left, he would take a lot of people with him. It was very likely that one of his crazy brothers would send someone to kill him. At this time, he was still thinking about others. "Okay, I will send some people to the Eastern Palace. You take care." Gong Che's expression was serious. "If this succeeds, you will reach the top as you wish. When the time comes, don't forget our agreement." Gong Dai turned and left. "I won't forget." He was really more and more interested in his brother now. He wanted to see how far Gong Che would go for a woman. Not long after he left, someone came to deliver food to Gong Che. Because Gong Che was only temporarily imprisoned, and he was still the crown prince, the food was quite sumptuous. Gong Che stared vigilantly at the person who came. He was not as relaxed as he had said before. His rebirth was still too short. Although he had people in the palace, and he had some power compared to his previous life. It was a world of difference. He had to be careful to stay alive to see Immerse. Immerse, wait for me. It will be over soon. Your Highness, please have your meal. Gong Che ordered indifferently. The palace servants lowered their heads and served the dishes, but they did not leave immediately. You may leave. Who would have thought that the man would not move? He even intentionally or unintentionally blocked the entrance and exit of the cell. With a tough attitude, he said, Your Highness, please eat. Don't make things difficult for this servant. Gong Che smiled faintly. These people really couldn't wait any longer and wanted to make a move. When the servant saw that Gong Che wasn't moving, his expression changed. He wanted to use force, but in the next second, his body stiffened and he fell to the ground. Gong Che put away the small box in his hand, the chi box. This was something he used to protect himself. Speaking of which, on the boat in his previous life, he suddenly had a relapse and wanted to use the chi box to attack Immerse. However, Immerse beat him to it and gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. That was also the first time they had intimate contact and the beginning of his depravity. Gong Che sat down. Soon, the prison guards who had disappeared ran over and dragged the corpse away with ugly expressions. For people squeezed in. While they were cleaning up the corpse, one of the prison guards suddenly attacked. After killing 2 of the prison guards beside him, he slashed at Gong Che. Gong Che turned around and grabbed the chi box in his hand again. However, at this time, one of the prison guards beside him helped him and knocked the assassin unconscious with a slap. Gong Che raised his head in surprise and saw that the prison guard looked up and smiled at him. That dark little face was no longer what it used to be. Who else could it be but Immerse? Gong Che's face was filled with joy, but it quickly turned into anger. Why are you here? Quickly go to the East Palace. You can be protected there. Gong Yimo shook her head. No, I will be wherever you are. You are in too much danger now. I have to stay and protect you. No, go back. Immerse, I am fine. Don't worry, okay? Fine. Gong Yimo did not believe him at all. Just now, the Imperial Dragon Guards found the dragon robe in the East Palace. This is not a small matter. How can you say that you are fine? Gong Che was stunned at first. Did they make things difficult for you? Seeing that Gong Che was still concerned about her first, Gong Yimo's mood improved a lot. Just a few Imperial Dragon Guards, and they want to make things difficult for me? Not only did I hide the dragon robe, I even forced them to bring me in. I'm not as weak as you think. Gong Che did not think that she was weak. He was just afraid that she would get hurt. Gong Yimo did not understand that even if she lost a strand of hair, he would be distressed for a long time. If it was not for the lack of time, he would definitely treat her to the extent that she would melt in his mouth. Gong Che sighed. What should I do with you? He stroked Gong Yimo's hair. But this matter will be over soon. Immerse, we will be able to leave very soon and never come back. Gong Yimo guessed that Gong Che and Gong Dai must have other plans. However, she did not care about that. Her only concern now was Gong Che's safety. Now that the Emperor's health was deteriorating, he was everyone's target. However, with her around, she would not allow anything to happen to him. We cannot stay here for long. Let's leave, Gong Yimo advised. Gong Che shook his head. Right now, I am bearing the crime of murdering Imperial Father. As long as this crime is not cleared, I cannot leave here. Otherwise, it will give others an excuse to make things difficult for me. Gong Yimo's eyes turned. In that case, you still have a place to go. Gong Che looked up at her. Gong Yimo pointed to the sky. Zhaoyang Hall. Gong Che's eyes lit up. Then he frowned. Without Imperial Father's decree, I cannot go. Right now, the palace is under martial law. Trespassing is a capital offense. Gong Yimo patted her chest. There's still me. I have a way. Back then, Imperial Uncle promised me 3 things. For the 3rd thing, he has not done it yet. Gong Che knew that the first thing she wanted to do was to marry him. The second thing she wanted to do was to break off the engagement. Thus, he asked her the 3rd thing. What is it? Gong Yimo blurted out. It's to have him find you a noble lady to be your wife. She almost bit her tongue after saying that. As expected, Gong Che's face darkened and he glared at her fiercely. He would be played to death by her sooner or later. Gong Yimo stuck out her tongue and wanted to slip away. However, she was pulled into Gong Che's embrace. Gong Che lowered his head and sighed. Thousands of words were condensed into one sentence. Be careful. You must remember that your safety is the most important thing. Everything else is insignificant. Gong Yimo's heart felt sweet. A trace of determination flashed across her eyes. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Moreover, I'll help you. With that, Gong Yimo left. She quickly walked toward Zhaoyang Hall. Using her outstanding qigong, she avoided everyone. In the end, she was stopped by Changshi. Who are you? After exchanging a blow with her, Changshi saw that it was her. He was rather surprised. Miss Shang, Gong Yimo nodded and went straight to the point. Eunuch, I have a matter to discuss with His Majesty. I hope that Eunuch can make things convenient for me. Chapter 863. Changshi thought about it and went in to report. Emperor Chen quickly received her. He liked Gong Yimo from the bottom of his heart, but unfortunately, after a year, his body deteriorated to this extent. It was really unexpected. When Gong Yimo saw Emperor Cheng, she found that he had lost a lot of weight. It was a far cry from his appearance a year ago. He looked as if he was about to die, indescribably dispirited. Why are you here? His voice was hoarse, as if he would stop breathing in the next second. Gong Yimo was kept as a mistress by Gong Che. Gong Che didn't hide it from him. He even told him about Gong Yimo's true identity, so Gong Che had a special kind of pity for Gong Yimo. After all, she was Xuelian's daughter. Gong Yimo initially thought that Emperor Cheng was fine, but it seemed that he had deceived everyone. His appearance wasn't a simple poisoning, but that he wouldn't live long. Her heart trembled, but she still said, Your Majesty, I came to ask for a favor. Now that everyone wants to make a move against the Crown Prince, I want to ask Your Majesty to protect him and let him enter Zhaoyang Hall. Emperor Cheng's face was pale, and he faintly said, Many people said that it was Gong Che who poisoned me. Now, you have seen my true appearance. The imperial physician said that I don't have long to live. Do you think that at this time, I will be so kind to protect someone who is suspected of harming me? Gong Yimo knew that the emperor's words were human nature. If it was an ordinary illness, then it would be fine. But now, the person behind the scenes clearly wanted to kill the emperor. At this time, the emperor wouldn't have the slightest mercy. But she still said, Your Majesty, the crown prince wouldn't do such a thing. Emperor Cheng shook his head, closed his eyes, and sighed. You may know a person for a long time without understanding his heart. I don't know. Who else can I trust? Gong Yimo thought for a while and reluctantly said, But you promised me 3 things. You didn't fulfill the last one. I hope that I can use the third request in exchange for the crown prince to leave the prison. Emperor Gong sighed and actually laughed. You are also an infatuated girl. Fine, if you really want to be like this, Jin will lock him in Zhaoyang Hall. However, if the emperor had always been suspicious of Gong Che, even if he was in Zhaoyang Hall, it would still be very dangerous now that the emperor was about to die. The person behind the scenes only needed to kill Gong Che to achieve his goal. It would be best if neither of these 2 people died. Gong Yimo suddenly looked up. If I can help you find the antidote, will you believe the crown prince? Detoxify? That's easy for you to say. Gong Cheng smiled, but lowered his head and coughed a few times. At this moment, she said, Your Majesty, this poison is the poison of the 9 meridians flower. There's no cure for it, but there's one thing that might work. It's just that ordinary people can't get it. Even your servant doesn't have the ability to do so. Gong Yimo was overjoyed. As long as there was an antidote, she would definitely be able to get it. Please tell me where the antidote is. I will definitely be able to get it. She patted the emperor's breathing as he said, On the broken stairway to heaven, there's a 9-step divine stairway. It said that on the 6th step, there's a flower called Mu Luo Jin. That flower can cure hundreds of poisons. However, the broken stairway to heaven was a cliff. That 9-step divine stairway wasn't a place that people could climb. Not to mention Changshi, perhaps only the legendary person of the transcendent state could do it. Gong Yimo suddenly looked up. I can do it. I will definitely find the antidote. Emperor Gong tiredly looked up at her. He wasn't willing to wait for death. Although he knew what the antidote was, he was helpless against it. At this moment, Gong Yimo made such a request. Although he didn't believe that Gong Yimo could do it, her intentions were still very moving. If she wanted to go, then let her go. When she arrived and found the cliff's wind blades, she would give up. Good. Jean, send someone to pick up the crown prince. You, take care of yourself. Gong Yimo nodded. She was indeed a newborn calf who was not afraid of the tiger. However, she also knew that if she couldn't do anything about it, it wouldn't be that simple. Therefore, she said shyly, Your Majesty, don't tell the crown prince about this matter. I will definitely get the antidote. Even if you really suspect that the crown prince did this before I come back, promise me to protect him, okay? Emperor Gong suddenly smiled. Good. You're a loyal girl. Your request. Jean agrees. Thank you, Your Majesty. After Gong Yimo finished speaking, she turned around and left. Emperor Gong didn't look like he had much time left. She must act quickly. Moreover, she had a good impression of Gong Cheng. She felt that he was a good uncle, and it would be a pity if he died like this. When she found the antidote, she would persuade Gong Cheng to go to Mount Yinding with her. He should be able to live for a few more years if he ignored worldly affairs and practiced the martial arts of Mount Yinding. With countless beautiful thoughts, Gong Yimo confidently left. Emperor Gong kept his promise and brought Gong Che to Xiaoyang Palace Hall. When she arrived at Xiaoyang Palace Hall, there were already a few more corpses in the death row prison. Gong Che felt very strange. Even if his brothers were anxious, it was impossible for them to be so impatient as to constantly send people to kill him. The only explanation was that there must be something that he and Gong Dai didn't know about. When Gong Che arrived at Xiaoyang Palace Hall, all the mysteries were answered. His imperial father's expression was decayed, and his face was filled with death aura. Emperor Gong could hide it from the world, but he couldn't hide it from the people who poisoned him. All the people behind the scenes knew that the emperor's life was short, so they wantonly attacked Gong Che. Gong Che was shocked. If things were not that simple, then what about Mo? Seeing Gong Che looking around, Emperor Gong couldn't help but laugh. Although he was poisoned to the heart, his spirit was still good. You're looking for that girl Gong Yimo? This name was given by him in the past, and it sounded pretty good. Gong Che nodded. Imperial father, Mo doesn't know the severity of the matter, but she did everything for this son. You don't need to be angry with her. Please return her to this son. Emperor Gong chuckled. Now, Gong Dai should be gathering troops, right? The people who poisoned him wanted to get rid of the emperor's side, and you also wanted to beat them at their own game. But Jun's appearance made you miscalculate. Emperor Gong couldn't be blamed for hiding this matter. He had many sons. Once everyone knew that he didn't have long to live, it wouldn't be so peaceful now. The entire capital would be in chaos. But Gong Che couldn't listen so much. He asked repeatedly, Imperial father, where is Mo? Emperor Gong glared at him. Mo, if Jun really died, you will be the one who will be the emperor. How can you, be so sentimental? Gong Che suddenly took a few steps forward, and Changshi stood between the father and son. Your Highness, please don't act blindly without thinking. Gong Che's whole body tensed up. Separated by Changshi, he asked for the last time, word by word. Where's Mo? His heart was uneasy. He always felt that something more unexpected was about to happen. Chapter 864. Changshi said with some displeasure, Your Highness, His Majesty is now poisoned. You shouldn't talk to His Majesty like this. Gong Che then realized that he had lost his composure. Seeing Gong Cheng's terrifying face, his heart also felt a bit of pain. In his previous life, Gong Cheng died because of him. In this life, although the father and son didn't have much interaction, the kinship of blood was still thicker than water. Imperial father, what kind of poison are you poisoned with? Gong Cheng narrowed his eyes. Jin said, I won't live long. This country will soon be your country. Imperial father, Changshi sighed. His Majesty has been poisoned by the 9 Meridians flower. There's no cure. The imperial physician also means that he won't live long. It had actually reached this point. One must know that the imperial physician generally wouldn't say such words. Once he said it, there was really no way to save the situation. Gong Chung glanced at him so, as the crown prince, it's time for you to fulfill your duty. Gong Chei's expression was solemn. He felt that there was a hidden meaning in Gong Cheng's words. What did he mean by he should fulfill his duty? What about Immerse? Imperial father wouldn't do anything to Immerse because of him, right? After all, Immerse was born in the wilderness. It's difficult for her to be the mother of a country. He said anxiously, no matter what, Imperial father, Immerse is this son's wife. Tell me where she is first. Gong Chung coughed a few times and sneered, wife? Are you married? Back then, she personally came to break off the engagement. She didn't marry anyone but you. Gong Chei said almost without hesitation, this son will marry anyone but her. Gong Chung glared and said angrily, you will marry anyone but her? That's only if she can come back. Gong Chei's heart became more and more uneasy. He asked coldly, what did you do? What did you do to her? She saw that Gong Chei was getting more and more agitated. He couldn't help but force him back and said loudly, Your Highness, calm down. Miss Shang only went to find an antidote for His Majesty. Gong Chei immediately caught the problem. Antidote? His thick eyebrows furrowed. If there is an antidote, why didn't you tell me? Instead, he sent a woman to look for him. What the hell is going on? She sighed. He glanced at Emperor Gong Cheng's pale face and whispered, although there is no cure for His Majesty's poison, legend has it that there is a strange object on the sky ladder that can cure hundreds of poisons. Maybe we can give it a try. Broken stairway to heaven. Gong Chei's lips trembled. He hadn't forgotten that was the place where he died. That was where he once jumped off the cliff with Immerse in his arms. But how could there be any divine objects there? It was just a cliff. Facing Gong Chei's question, she said, on the 6th step of the 9 steps divine stairs, it is said that there's a flower called Mu Luo Jin that can cure hundreds of poisons. So, you want Immerse to break the sky ladder? You want to force her to jump off the cliff? Emperor Gong Chung snorted. Broken stairway to heaven is windy, she can only look and turn back. What's more, a girl? He took a deep breath. Zhen sees that although the girl is full of enthusiasm, when she sees the sky ladder, she will naturally come back. How can it be forcing her to jump off the cliff? Emperor Gong Chung didn't believe that Gong Yimo would really jump off the cliff, but he wanted to see how far Gong Yimo could go for Gong Chei. That deep affection, whether it could withstand the test. His light words made Gong Chei tremble all over. He knew Immerse too well. Normally, when people saw that things were not going well, they would give up after trying their best. But Immerse, she did not know what giving up meant. Thinking of this, Gong Chei went crazy. He hurriedly ran out, not knowing where to go, and almost hit a pillar. Your Royal Highness, where are you going? She frowned, because he had never seen Gong Chei lose his self-control like this. Get out of the way, I want to find her. Ridiculous. Emperor Gong Chung couldn't bear to see other people being emotional, especially Gong Chei. He was the crown prince, the one who would inherit the throne in the future. How could he be so impetuous? He gasped and said, It's not like she won't come back. What do you look like? Gong Chei didn't listen at all. She's not a person who will retreat in the face of difficulties. Get out of the way. I'm going to find her. Emperor Gong Chung was really angry this time. His face sank. Gong Yimo tried every possible way to get you to take refuge in Jiayang Hall. Is this how you do things? You're not even as good as a little girl. How can you take on such a big responsibility? Shi's obstruction caused Gong Chei's heart to burn with anxiety. He abruptly turned around and spoke quickly. It's a matter of life and death. Imperial Father, Immerse is someone who will jump down the stairway to heaven. If she's in any danger, Gong Chei couldn't bear to continue. Emperor Gong Cheng's face turned even colder. So what if she's in danger? She's just a girl, and she was poisoned to death because of me. It's also a worthy death. No, I absolutely can't let her be in any danger. Gong Che suddenly knelt down on both knees. Imperial Father, please let me go. If you need Mu Luo Jin, this son will go get it for you. This matter has nothing to do with Immerse. This son won't allow her to have any mishap. Then you can have any mishap? Emperor Gong Chung suddenly waved his hand, letting Changshi retreat, and said angrily, "You can go. Take a step out of Zhaoyang Hall. Whether you're dead or alive, I won't care about you anymore." Who knew that his words would make Gong Che ecstatic? He quickly got up and walked towards the door in large strides. Emperor Gong Chung only felt a trace of fishy sweetness overflowing from his throat. He angrily shouted, "If you go out of this door, you will no longer be the crown prince." Gong Che's figure paused, and in the next second, he went out of Zhaoyang Hall's door. Bastard! Emperor Gong Chung was furious and broke the teacup on the low table beside the bed. The fragments fell to the ground. After Gong Che came out, he finally stopped hiding. He mobilized all the forces in his hands to cover him and avoid all the assassination attempts. He smoothly left the palace, and then hurriedly ran towards the stairway to heaven. With hundreds of people opening the way, it should be unimpeded, but he still felt that it was too slow. His heart was thumping, as if something was about to leave him. When Gong Yimo reached the stairway to heaven, it was really a bit tiring. If she was given enough time, she thought that she could make a simple climbing frame or other props. However, when she came, she carefully inquired that there were flowers in the mountain stream. An old man who picked herbs once went down to the second step of the 9 steps of the stairway to heaven. He smelled a bitter and sweet smell below, which was the smell of the legendary Mu Luo Jin. However, when it came to October, the smell disappeared, so she guessed that the flowering period was in October. Now that it was the end of September, Mu Luo Jin needed flowers to be effective, so there was no time to make props for her. She had to use the simple and crude method of picking herbs and directly climb down the rope. Fortunately, she had some climbing tools in her space, such as climbing ropes, iron locks, rock plugs, and so on. As long as she was careful, it shouldn't be too dangerous, but this was just a self-deceiving idea. Climbing a cliff, especially a vertical and neat stone wall like the stairway to heaven, the slightest mistake would cause her to be smashed to pieces. That was fine, but judging from the wind blowing from the bottom of the cliff, the wind below must be even stronger. Under such circumstances, it was easy for her to be blown by the wind, which greatly increased the degree of danger. Chapter 865. But she could do it. She had modern rock climbing tools, so she had an advantage over the ancient people. Once she successfully took back the Mu Luo Jin, Gong Che would be safe. She decided to do it. Gong Yimo fastened the rope to a huge rock and pulled it. It felt quite secure. She tied the safety rope on her body and stood at the edge of the cliff with her back facing the cliff. The strong wind blew, causing her back to feel cold. Although she was not afraid of heights, when she thought of the abyss behind her, she still felt a little scared. At this moment, she suddenly saw someone running over from afar. Gong Yimo looked carefully and found that it was Gong Che. Scary, why did he come? Thinking of Gong Che's nervous personality, he would definitely not agree to her taking the risk. But now that the arrow was on the bow, she had no choice but to release it. It was better for her not to say goodbye. Gong Che saw Gong Yimo standing at the edge of the cliff. At that moment, he only felt that his heart was about to stop. Moa. His voice was too mournful and hoarse, causing Gong Yimo to stop jumping down. Seeing him running towards her, she thought timidly, should she first admit her mistake? Gong Che ran to her side in a few steps. Seeing that she was standing at the edge, he did not dare to come closer for a moment. He looked at her with a frightened expression and finally said in a very soft voice, "Come here." Gong Yimo shook her head. Time waits for no one. She did not want the emperor to die, nor did she want anything to happen to Gong Che. "It's okay. I'm confident that I can get the Mu Luo Jin. Don't worry." As she said that, she moved back a little. That little distance made Gong Che's heart almost jump to his throat. "You don't have to do this." He came closer little by little and said in the least provocative voice, "Come here. I'm father's child. The Mu Luo Jin should be taken by me." Come back. Gong Yimo felt that his expression was a little strange. She was going to pick herbs, not to jump off a cliff. Why was Gong Che looking at her, as if she was going to commit suicide? The wind is too strong. You can't do it. She frowned. Don't worry, I won't disappoint you. I will definitely get this Winnett brocade back. Imoa. Gong Che closed her eyes in pain. She had no idea what the heaven stairway was. This was the place where they had fallen together, and this place made him extremely terrified. She didn't know anything at all. Don't worry. Gong Yimo was a little anxious. She should go down first. If there was anything, wait until she came up. Seeing that she didn't listen to him, Gong Che suddenly opened his eyes. Gong Yimo. This was the first time he had called her by her full name. Gong Yimo was stunned and looked at him blankly. She saw that Gong Che's body was stiff as he stood straight and looked at her. There was anger on his face, but more than that, there was pain. After running continuously, his crown had already fallen on the road. At this moment, his long hair was flying in the wind. With that white robe, there was an indescribable sense of tragedy. Gong Yimo's expression turned serious as she gritted her teeth. Gong Che, you have to know that I'm not a bird in a cage. Her voice was very calm, and her expression was very calm. You like me, you care about me. I can feel it, but you've protected me too well. I have hands and feet, I have intelligence and ability. I can fight side by side with you and help you, not standing behind you for everything. That's not husband and wife. Gong Che's eyes gradually turned red. Gong Yimo's words had exposed his selfishness. All along, he had been too afraid of losing her. He didn't dare to let Gong Yimo see Gong die. He didn't dare to let Gong Yimo show off her talent. He didn't even dare to let her stand at the edge of the stairway. Because in this place, she had once died for someone, but that person wasn't him. Gong Che would never forget that back then. She jumped off the cliff because she didn't want to kill Gong Dai, but she couldn't control herself. This place made him afraid. It should be said that he was afraid at all times. This happiness was as if he had stolen it. It didn't belong to him, but he couldn't give up. Gong Yimo continued speaking, her tone powerful. I don't know why you're so afraid. It's as if I'll leave you in the end. Then let me tell you today, if I can jump off this cliff for you, I'll climb back up for you. What you need to do is to believe in me. Her heels were completely in the air, and a look of determination appeared on her face. As long as you believe in me once, you'll always believe in me. At that time, we'll be husband and wife. Gong Che's body trembled slightly. He didn't know how to fill up his feelings at this moment. On one hand, he was afraid of losing her. On the other hand, he believed in her. Could he do it? Seeing her disappear before his eyes and believing that she would come back, Gong Che walked step by step in front of Gong Yimo. His eyes were red, his face was pale, and his hair was messy. His gaze was so miserable, as if he was the one who was walking on the edge of the cliff. If he wasn't careful, he would be smashed to pieces. His fair and slender fingers touched Gong Yimo's face. He lowered his head and looked at Gong Yimo with an indescribable sorrow. Will you really come back for me? He was so afraid. What would happen if she disappeared just like that? Gong Yimo looked up. The two of them were very close. At such a close distance, she could clearly see his red eyes and hear his trembling voice. Men don't cry easily, but for her, he seemed to be able to disregard everything. Such deep affection moved one's heart. Believe in me. For you, I'll definitely come back. How long? How long will you be away from me? Gong Yimo pondered. This round trip would take at least a day, right? You'll wait for me here for a day? Gong Che said firmly. I'll wait for you here. But what if someone comes after you? This time, it was Gong Yimo's turn to be worried. It was already so dangerous in the palace. What more outside? Gong Che put down his hand and said tightly, I believe that you'll come back. You also have to believe that I'll be safe. Husband and wife, one heart, right? Gong Yimo couldn't help but smile. Yes, husband and wife. As she said that, she tiptoed and kissed Gong Che's lips. Gong Che opened his eyes wide in a daze, as if he couldn't believe this kiss. Their long hair tangled together. In the end, it was Gong Yimo's big smile. Wait for me. After saying that, she leaped backwards. Her figure quickly disappeared into the clouds. The rope fluttered and then suddenly became taut. Gongche couldn't help but take another step forward and look down. At this time, his toes were slightly in the air. The wind from the bottom of the cliff made his hair flutter. He looked like a crazy devil. His sleeves were fluttering. He seemed like he was going to leave with the wind, but also seemed like he was going to fall into the abyss. I believe in you. His voice was so soft that it couldn't be heard. The redness in his eyes faded, and his expression became firm. He wouldn't forget her words. She said that she fell off the cliff for him and would also climb back up for him. Gong Yimo, this is your promise to me. You have to do it. Chapter 866. After Gong Yimo jumped down, she was really worried about herself. The wind below was much stronger than above. She was swayed left and right by the mountain wind, and her breathing was a little irregular. She took a while to get used to it before she stuffed the rock plug into the gap between the mountain rocks. Then she put the rope through it and fixed it with the rock plug as she climbed down bit by bit. However, the stone wall across the stairway was too vertical and smooth. Sometimes, the rock plug felt that it was not stable after being stuffed in several places. However, there was no other way now. This kind of traditional climbing method was very dangerous. Finally, she reached the first step. The 9-step stairway was very vivid. It was very tall and was said to be the place where gods ascended to heaven. Its long and narrow shape was also like a flight of stairs. Every step had a different surprise. The first step was not very big. It was about 200 square meters. It was long and rectangular. There were no plants on the mountain walls, but there were plants here. Moreover, because of the climate, the plants were very strange and different from the outside. There were abandoned straw baskets and nests of bird eggs on the ground. Occasionally, people would come down here to collect herbs, so it was normal to have human tools. Gong Yimo rested for a while and then went down to the second step. During the process, she felt cold. It was the end of September, but there was a kind of winter chill. Fortunately, she had internal strength to protect her body, so there was no problem for the time being. However, the wind in the mountain stream was getting stronger, making her dizzy. The second step was a concave rectangular stone pit, about 400 square meters in size. At this time, she could not help but praise nature's uncanny workmanship. Because in such a large and slender pit, there was a self-contained cycle. There was water, trees, birds, and naturally there were also herbs. Gong Yimo did not stay for long. She did not forget that her goal was the 6th step. However, the old man who collected herbs said that the 2nd step was the limit. If she went down, she would reach the palace of the king of hell. After going down, no one had come up. Gong Yimo was not convinced and really wanted to go down and take a look. Halfway up, Gong Yimo felt that other than the wind being stronger, there was nothing different. That was not right. The sky seemed to have darkened. The place was filled with water vapor, and the sunlight was gradually unable to shine in. The lower she went, the darker it was. Gong Yimo had a bad feeling, and her movements gradually slowed down. She put on a flashlight cap and felt much better. The stone walls here were very slippery. When she went down the rock plugs, she couldn't find a suitable spot, so she had to put 2 or 3 rock plugs to reinforce it. Fortunately, she had a lot of outdoor equipment in her space. If she found something she liked, she would buy a few sets of climbing tools. Otherwise, there wouldn't be enough rope to go down here. Gong Yimo finally reached the 3rd step. This place was also a rectangular platform that extended into the mountain wall. It was hard to see how big it was, but the plants were quite lush. The 9 steps divine staircase, it really was 1 step at a time. No wonder there was such a legend. There were a lot of plants in front of her, but she didn't dare to go too deep to avoid unnecessary trouble. At this time, she finally smelled a faint sweet and bitter fragrance from the bottom of the cliff. It seemed that the flowering period of the Muluo gene had not passed yet. Gong Yimo was relieved and decided to find a place to sit down. She saw that there was a piece of dead wood on the ground that was not in the grass, so she sat on it. But the moment she sat down, she realized that something was wrong. The wood was actually a little elastic. It could fucking move. Gong Yimo turned around. Behind her was a snake with a bloody mouth. and she was sitting on the snake. After Gong Yimo went down, Gong Che ordered people to seal off the place. Then, he didn't plan to leave and sat down on a big rock. But just because he didn't look for trouble, it didn't mean that trouble wouldn't find him. There was a commotion. Someone brought a group of private soldiers and broke in. The leader was the sixth prince. Gong Che glanced at him. His eyes were indescribably cold. In his previous life, it wasn't that he didn't have brothers who died in his hands. It was just that he cared about his reputation and didn't do things as ruthlessly as Gong Dai. But he had already dealt with people once. Dealing with them again would only be easy. The sixth prince, Gong Chi, was the son of Lu Xianfei. But Lu Xianfei was killed by Gong Dai the year he left the Cold Palace. The reason Gong Chi was still alive was because Gong Dai didn't want to kill him so quickly. These few years, he had been a mess. Now, it seems that he had become someone else's hired thug. Gong Chi wasn't good looking. At most, his facial features were regular. At this time, he was looking at Gong Che with a vicious expression. Now that the emperor didn't have long to live, as long as they killed Gong Che, this country would be theirs. At that time, even if Gong Dai's ability was heaven-defying, he wouldn't be able to reverse the situation. Royal brother, you didn't stay in Zhaoyang Palace and came here. Is it to make it easier for me to silence you? It's to make it easier to silence you, Gong Che said. He sat on the stone floor and didn't get up. His long hair quietly spread over his shoulders. His appearance was handsome and gentle, but at this time, there was a demonic color to it. Gong Chi, if you dare to make a move today, tomorrow morning, the evidence of you stealing from the national treasury and illegally raising taxes will be sent to Royal Father. Royal Father is about to die, but he's not dead yet. There's still time to deal with a trash like you. Gong Che's words made Gong Chi's heart tremble. He had done it so covertly and didn't leave any evidence. This Gong Che must be tricking him. Thinking of this, Gong Chi suppressed his panic and said loudly, "You're the trash. For the past 20 years, your position as the crown prince has been unstable. In the past few months, you've only improved a little. Someone like you dares to say that you have something to use against me?" Gong Che only smiled. "Do you still remember Lu Xian and Zhangzhe? Sometimes, if you don't silence them, they will die. They are now in my hands. If you don't believe me, you can try." Only then did Gong Chi feel afraid. Weren't those two killed by him? Could it be that his subordinates were lying to him? "Prince, are we still going to make a move?" One of Gong Chi's subordinates asked softly. Gong Chi thought that since the person was here, he might as well find someone to verify it first. It wouldn't be too late to make a decision later. Thus, he said in a deep voice, "Let's wait and see. This prince wants to see what he's doing here." "But master," a trace of embarrassment flashed across Gong Chi's face. "I'll take care of him. You, go, and check if Lu Xian and Zhang Zhou are still alive." Yes, that person retreated unwillingly. At this time, the crown prince only had 100 people. If they attacked together, they would definitely be able to take down the crown prince. There was no need to waste time here. Seeing that he had calmed down, Gong Che only closed his eyes. The two sides faced each other, but no one spoke. The air around the cliff condensed, as if waiting for a breakthrough. It was also like the calm before the storm. Chapter 867. The huge python moved and wrapped itself around Gong. Gong had never seen such a large snake in her life. She didn't pay attention and was wrapped around by the python. The snake's body was so tight that she almost couldn't breathe. It wasn't over yet. The huge snake tied Gong Yimo up and opened its mouth to bite her head. Gong Yimo was stunned. At the last moment, she pulled out a hand to block it. The huge snake bit down, but it couldn't close its mouth because a thick Oxford dictionary suddenly appeared in her hand. It was stuck in its mouth, no matter how wide it opened its mouth. It couldn't swallow it down. The huge snake shook its head in discomfort, as if it wanted to swallow or spit out the big fellow stuck in its throat. However, its body tightened even more, as if it couldn't wait to turn its prey into minced meat. Gong Yimo relied on her inner strength to protect her body and prevent her spine from breaking. However, it was still uncomfortable. She pulled out her hand and took advantage of the moment when the huge snake was shaking its head to quickly take out a sharp dagger. With the help of her inner strength, she ruthlessly stabbed the snake's body. It was said that to beat a snake, one had to hit its 7 inches. She didn't know if she stabbed it or not, but the snake didn't die. However, it let out a hiss and suddenly let go of her. It quickly drilled into the depths of the dark cave. Gong Yimo gasped for breath and didn't chase after it. This fellow had probably lived for several hundred years. Besides, she still had important matters to attend to and couldn't delay. It was a pity that her Oxford dictionary had followed her, and she hadn't opened it even once. Gong Yimo didn't dare to stay for long and continued down. She wanted to make a round trip in one day so that Gong Che wouldn't be worried. Fastening the buckle again, Gong Yimo continued to climb down. The mountain stream was getting colder and colder, and the light was getting weaker and weaker. The air was filled with water vapor, and chilly wind blew. It was as if there was some monster hiding in the dark, waiting for an opportunity to make its move. Gong Yimo shook her head and shook off those unrealistic fantasies. How could there be any demons or ghosts? She was just scaring herself. The people Gong Chi sent out returned very quickly. After reporting, Gong Chi's expression became much uglier. It seemed that those two people had really fallen into Gong Che's hands. If he acted rashly, the one who would be dealt with tomorrow would be him. Gong Che had the intention to retreat, but Gong Che acted as if he did not see this scene. He was absent-minded as he listened to the reports of his subordinates. He only felt that time was passing very slowly, and every moment was torture. Gong Chi thought about it and felt that it was not appropriate to take the risk now. After all, according to the plan, the emperor still had some time before he died, so it was better for him not to offend the emperor. Just as he was about to retreat with his men, someone suddenly came to report, "Your Highness, Master and Gongdai are fighting outside the city." Master said that there is a change in the plan. Today, Prince must kill the crown prince and meet up in the capital. Upon hearing that Gongdai had actually brought troops here, Gong Chi was subconsciously afraid. These past few years, he had been tormented by Gongdai and was afraid that he was like a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Moreover, Gongdai's sudden appearance had disrupted his plans, causing him to feel even more uneasy. "Your Highness, now is not the time to be afraid." The person glanced at Gong Che, who was sitting quietly on the boulder, and a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. "If we can directly attack the yellow dragon today, no matter what kind of weakness others have on you, Master will be able to protect you." His words finally moved Gong Chi's heart. His expression was ruthless as he stared at Gong Che, his eyes filled with killing intent. Gong Che's men were on alert, protecting Gong Che behind them. Following Gong Chi's order, the two sides instantly engaged in battle. Gong Che had brought more than 100 people, while Gong Che had 200 to 300 people. Gong Che was at a disadvantage. Moreover, this was only the beginning. If he planned to force the abdication today, then Gong Che would definitely die here today. Even if Gong Chi was defeated, there would still be an endless stream of people coming to kill him. They would not rest until they were dead. Gong Che also received the news that Gong Dai had already made his move. As long as he did not die, he would be able to attract an endless stream of enemies. In this battle to force the abdication, both sides did not have many people. The more people he killed, the greater their chances of victory. As for how dangerous it was for him to be in this open space, he had never considered this problem. The two of them fought like a raging fire. Very quickly, the team that Gong Dai had sent to protect the Eastern Palace also arrived. After such a long time, Gong Che had not done nothing. He would not let himself die like this. He still wanted to be together with his beloved. With their addition, the battle became one-sided. Gong Chi gradually lost, and fear began to grow in his heart. His reinforcements were still on the way, so he had to think of a way to stall for time. At this time, his sharp eyes suddenly saw a strange black rope tied to a large rock. Gong Che had been sitting there all this time. Could it be because of that rope? His evil guts grew as he hurriedly gathered the remaining men and charged in Gong Che's direction. Everyone thought that they were going to kill the crown prince, but the crown prince did not dodge. Everyone could only risk their lives to protect him, but they did not expect that Gong Chi was going for the rope. Gong Chi was shocked. He wanted to make a move, but it was already too late. He did not expect Gong Chi to notice the rope and discover his purpose of guarding here. Humph, Gong Chi, you also have a day like this. You want to guard this rope, right? I wonder who is tied to it. Gong Chi's face was gloomy. Let go. I'll let you go. Otherwise, I'll tear you to pieces. When Gong Chi heard that the other party was letting him go, he was overjoyed, but he thought of their grand plan. Even if he left like this, he would not be able to bear the consequences. The only thing he could do now was to stall for time and wait for reinforcements. You're the one who let go. Retreat. All of you retreat, or I'll cut off this rope. Gong Chi's words made Gong Chi's face turn pale. He knew that if Mo wanted to come up, she would still need to rely on this rope. He could not let it break. Seeing Gong Chi's change in expression, Gong Chi knew that it was useful and laughed. Retreat, retreat. Otherwise, I'll cut it off. Gong Chi panicked and suddenly said, Don't touch it. He pursed his lips and stared at the other party. What you want is my life. I'll go over, don't touch it. At this time, there were only a few people left on Gong Chi's side. Gong Chi did not expect such a turn of events and was overjoyed. All right, come here. Your Highness, you can't. Someone tried to dissuade him, but Gong Chi did not listen at all and walked step by step towards Gong Chi, who was standing at the edge of the cliff. Seeing that the two sides were getting closer and closer, Gong Chi slightly loosened the rope in his hand. Gong Chi saw this, and when he was only a few meters away, he suddenly made his move. In the past year or so at Mount Yinding, although Gong Chi did not learn any decent martial arts, in order to let him protect himself, Gong Yimo still taught him a few moves to protect himself. Unexpectedly, he quickly kicked the two guards away. His hands were in the shape of claws, carrying a bone-piercing, killing intent. He stabbed towards Gong Chi. Gong Chi was shocked. In his desperation, he pushed a guard beside him out. That person blocked the death blow for Gong Chi, allowing Gong Chi to narrowly escape with his life. Chapter 868. Gong Chi did not expect Gong Chi to know martial arts, and even more, did not expect that he would dare to fight back at this time. Thus, he ruthlessly chopped at the rope. Aren't you nervous about this rope? If you dare to kill me, I will cut this rope. This series of actions only took a few seconds. After Gong Chi shook off the guard, he saw this scene, and his pupils shrank. No! Gong Chi's vision blurred, and in the next second he discovered that someone had actually caught the edge of his blade. Gong Chi was stunned. Without waiting for him to react, Gong Chi struck out with his palm, and Gong Chi fell off the cliff like a kite with a broken string. The rest of the people were taken care of by Gong Chi's men in a few moves. Only then did Gong Chi throw away the blade, his palm covered in blood. Your Highness! Someone hurriedly ran over to bandage him and advised in a low voice, Your Highness, this place is vast, difficult to attack, and difficult to defend. Today, there will definitely be a bitter battle. Why don't we retreat to a safe place? No need. Gong Chi's face was pale. He took the gauze from his hand and hastily bandaged it himself. The wind from the mountain stream blew his long hair, and his gentle eyes were exceptionally calm at this time. I want to wait here for her to come back. Right here, not a single step away. Gong Yimo finally reached the 4th floor. Even with a flashlight, the visibility was less than 3 meters. Moreover, there were weeds and trees everywhere, making it impossible for people to step on them. The only thing that was worth gratifying was that the fragrance of the wood silk brocade was even stronger. Gong Yimo could not help but think that although it was said that there was only wood silk brocade on the 6th floor, there might be some on the 4th floor as well. Thus, she decided to look for it nearby. Legend has it that the flower was red, and its appearance was in the shape of layers of discs. The flower was very large, so logically speaking, it should be very easy to find. Gong Yimo was afraid that there would be something like a python here, so she calmed her chi and concentrated, being especially careful. From time to time, she could hear the cries of unknown insects. There was no wind here, but it was exceptionally cold. Gong Yimo felt that she was a little numb from the cold. Although the protruding part of the fourth layer also looked like a flight of stairs, it extended a lot deeper into the cliff. It was pitch black inside, and no one knew where it led to. Gong Yimo couldn't help but wonder if there was a path that led directly to the sixth layer. Otherwise, when she was climbing outside, even if she had enough tools, the slightest mistake would result in her being smashed to pieces. Gong Yimo was overjoyed. She walked towards the depths of the mountain step by step. She used a sword to open a path. She realized that the vegetation was gradually decreasing, and there were more and more exposed rocks. Furthermore, it was heading downwards. Gong Yimo was overjoyed. It seemed that this path could really lead downwards. His only regret was that he didn't find any wood brocade along the way. It seemed that he really had to go down to the sixth level. At this moment, she suddenly heard some movement. When she came back to her senses, she immediately ran out. Soon, the black bats moved out. If they were ordinary bats, it would have been fine. However, Gong Yimo saw with her own eyes that the birds that were flying earlier had turned into white bones in an instant. These bats had mutated. They actually ate meat directly? That sharp cry made Gong Yimo dizzy. There shouldn't have been any sound, but she heard it. Moreover, the sound waves made her want to vomit. She quietly hid behind a rock and adjusted her breathing. She was secretly glad that she had trusted her intuition. If she hadn't run just now, she would definitely have been injured. Just as she was rejoicing, she felt a sharp pain on her fingertips. It turned out to be a dark green centipede. It was more than 10 centimeters long. Only the spot on its head was bright red. Damn it, this thing's poison was definitely not small. Gong Yimo deftly killed the centipede. Then, she cut open the area where she was bitten. She released the poisonous blood and swallowed an antidote pill. When she came down, she had sprinkled some insect repellent powder on her body. She didn't know why the animals here were so powerful. The powder didn't have much effect. It seemed that she still had to be more careful. This was the 9 steps divine staircase. It was also called the 9 layers of hell by the local herb gatherers. It was obvious that it wasn't a good place to enter. Groups and groups of people had died beside the altar. This was the sacred place of Daiyu State. It was a place that shouldn't be stained with dust. However, Gong Che had dyed this place red with blood, all because he was waiting for one person. His white robe was dyed with blood, like blooming red plum blossoms. The number of people Gong Che had killed today was much more than the number of people he had killed in his 2 lives combined. The feeling of his blade cutting open the flesh of his enemies made him feel very uncomfortable. However, he couldn't stop, because he had to guard this place and wait for Immerse to return. Your Highness, let's go. The next group of enemies will be here soon. If you don't leave, you will be in danger. Gong Che's hand was trembling. He loosened his grip, and the sword fell to the ground. The corpses on the ground were very eye-catching. The gauze on his palm was once again soaked with blood. Drops of blood stained his pale face. That gentle, jade-like face was now frozen. There was an indescribable chill. I'm not leaving. His voice was a little hoarse. This place is a little far from the palace. If they come here, they can relieve some of the pressure on the palace. Most importantly, he looked at the cliff. I have to wait for her. At this time, a large group of soldiers and horses had killed their way up the mountain. Gong Che's side only had a few hundred people left. The situation became tense again. Your Highness, what should we do now? Hearing this, Gong Che suddenly looked in another direction. A faint smell of medicine wafted over. There was a movement in the forest, and a few birds flew out. Following a long whistle, Qiuxing Feng, whose robe was whiter than snow, rushed over with a group of people in green. He shouted as he ran, "Who dares to hurt my grand disciple?" Gong Che's lips curled into a smile. Previously on Yunding Mountain, he had spent a year to form an alliance with Qiu Zhongchan. Now, it was time for them to help. With the help of the people on Yunding Mountain, the 2 sides were evenly matched. Who would emerge victorious would depend on who was favored by the heavens. The sky gradually darkened. Gong Che reached out to push away the wet hair in front of his eyes. His fingertips were stained with blood on his white forehead. There was a kind of extreme fragility and an extreme demonic beauty. He completely threw away the restraints of the crown prince and followed his heart. A subtle pleasure gradually rose in his chest. He thought he liked the martial world. At this time, Gong Yimo's situation was not good. She was a little dizzy and her body was gradually losing strength. After seeing those scary bats, Gong Yimo gave up on walking inside the mountain. Compared to those strange creatures, she felt that it was safer to climb the mountain. But in the process of climbing, she gradually found that something was wrong. Her hands were sweating. Fortunately, she was wearing a pair of climbing gloves. Otherwise, she would have slipped down. This was not the most serious thing. The most serious thing was that she was seeing double. The sky was completely dark. The torchlight hat on her head became the only source of light. Chapter 869. Gong Yimo reached for the rock, but she failed several times. When she took a closer look, she found that she had stuffed it in the wrong place. Gong Yimo took a deep breath. Her muddled mind finally realized that something was wrong. She was poisoned or something else. She couldn't continue climbing now. She had to find a place to rest. Gong Yimo looked around. There was no wind here, but her breath turned into frost. At this time, she was between the fourth and fifth layer. There was no place for her to stand. The true chi in her body was gradually out of balance. She felt a chill seeping into her bones. A sense of exhaustion arose from the depths of her heart. She suddenly wanted to sleep. So sleepy. No, she couldn't sleep. If she fell asleep, she might not wake up. Gong Yimo pulled herself together to look for things in her space. Medicine bottles appeared in her hands one after another. She didn't care what medicine they were and took a little. She became more and more dizzy. She could only pray that these medicines were useful. She had to go back. She had promised that person that she would go back. Suddenly, Gong Yimo's foot slipped and her whole body was suspended in the air. The intense feeling of weightlessness and panic shocked her. Fortunately, the safety belt on her waist supported her weight. She swayed in the mountain stream, but didn't fall. That was close. A wave of dizziness hit her again. Gong Yimo made up her mind and bit the tip of her tongue. Her numb fingertips continued to climb the rock. She couldn't stop. It was very dangerous here. She had to get the Mu Luo gene as soon as possible and go back. She said that she wanted to go back. At this time, the entire Daiyu state was in chaos. Several different people were fighting in the imperial city. When they fought until their eyes were red, they felt that everyone was an enemy and no one could be trusted. The imperial palace was under martial law. This was the last line of defense of the Daiyu state. In order to pull himself together, Emperor Gong took the tiger wolf medicine and forced himself to take charge. In short, he would not let the Daiyu state fall into chaos for the throne unless he died. What's the situation now? Emperor Gong paid close attention to the battle. He never thought that Gong Yimo would bring back the antidote, so he was prepared to die. He also wanted to see who the final winner was. Chang, she said respectfully. The first prince wanted to force his way into the palace under the guise of purging the emperor's evil ministers, but he was stopped by the ninth prince. The two of them fought several times outside the city. The first prince was defeated and fled, joining forces with the second prince. Jioa, Gong Dai, he is a wolf cub, but where did the soldiers in his hands come from? I did not give him any troops. Because he was wary of Gong Dai, Gong Chung gave Gong Dai power and status, but did not give others power. Chang, she lowered his head. Jin Shi of Gojoseon has 100,000 soldiers under his command. Those are probably the elites that Jin Shi of Gojoseon gave them. Speaking of this, Gong Chung didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Should he praise Gong Dai for being able to quietly bring people from the West Continent here? Or should he say that Gong Dai was ambitious? After all, secretly crossing the border was not something that could be done overnight. He did not know how long he had been planning this. What about the crown prince? Gong Ching never understood the relationship between Gong Che and Gong Dai. Logically speaking, a person like Gong Dai would not be willing to be under someone else. Why did he support the crown prince after he returned to the imperial court? Changshi whispered. The crown prince is breaking the stairway to heaven. Gongcheng's eyes widened. Then his eyes slowly burst with anger. He actually stayed at the edge of the cliff for a woman? Gong Yimo. She really jumped down? Changshi nodded. She jumped down. 10 hours have passed, and her life is unknown. Hearing Changshi's words, Gong Cheng was suddenly not so angry. Although Gong Che did not fulfill his duty as the crown prince at this time, he and Gong Yimo were working hard for his life. At this moment, Gong Cheng thought of many things. On one hand, it was a life and death contest for supreme power. On the other hand, it was a life and death race for the sake of love. Obviously, it should not be, but Gong Cheng's heart still surged with an indescribable feeling. Moreover, he also understood that Gong Che really did not have the heart to become the emperor. Perhaps Gong Che came back this time because of Gong Dai. But when did their relationship become so good? He could only wait for them to return to find out the reason for all of this, if he could really wait for them to return. Your Highness, don't wait any longer. Now that the war has spread to the city, as the crown prince, you should go back and preside over the situation. After another bloody battle, the remaining subordinates knelt down and begged. Not many people from Yunding Mountain died. As a surprise team, with their help, Gong Dai's side would be like a tiger that had grown wings. Seeing that Gong Che did not answer, someone shouted, Your Highness, please go down the mountain and preside over the situation. You are the crown prince. You are the one who is destined. Daiyu State needs you, and the people of the capital also need you. If it were any other time, Gong Che would definitely go with them. Ever since he was a child, he had received the most orthodox education of a crown prince. He was kind and benevolent. Everything he had learned was about governing the country and making it rich. Ever since he was a child, people had always said that he was the crown prince and that he carried the country on his back, as well as the hopes of the people. In his previous life, he did do so, but later, he gradually became unwilling. Why did he have to be the crown prince? Why did he have to prioritize the country? Why couldn't he do whatever he wanted? He knew that this thought was very wrong. But from the moment he couldn't control himself and jumped down with Immerse in his arms, he knew that he wasn't a person who would prioritize his country. He had a very strong sense of selfishness and personal desires. He wasn't willing to live for others. Or it could be said that he had already lived for his mother, his family, the country, and his father. But in that life, he was not happy, not at all. At this moment, he knew what he should do, but he didn't want to move. The people of the country needed him, and Immerse also needed him. Since he had already been selfish once, then he would be selfish to the end. So Gong Che looked at the crowd and calmly gave the order. All soldiers, hear my order. I order you to immediately descend the mountain and lend King Qi a hand. Everyone looked at each other. Someone asked, Your Highness, what about you? I'm not going. Gong Che turned around and looked at the dark cliff. There was a trace of smile in his eyes. From now on, I'm no longer the crown prince. Soon, you'll have a new crown prince. That person is more suitable than me. As he spoke, he looked at the people of Yunding Mountain. I hope that everyone can go down the mountain together and help the imperial court. The senior brother of Yunding Mountain nodded. Master ordered us to listen to your highness's orders. We dare not disobey your highness's orders. Qiuxing Feng jumped out. I'm not going. Grand disciple, you are so weak. I will stay to protect you and wait for my disciple to come up. Gong Che smiled gently. He looked at Qiuxing Feng and showed kindness for the first time. Okay, we will wait for her together. Chapter 870. After climbing for a long time, the rope ran out. Gong Yimo took out a spare rope from her space. She tried a few times, but still couldn't get it into the lock. Her forehead was sweating profusely, and she was about to collapse. At this moment, a sharp whistle came from the clouds. A huge bird flew towards her. Its sharp beak shone with cold light. It tore a wound on Gong Yimo's arm. Gong Yimo was caught off guard. Her feet loosened, and her whole body swayed in the air with the help of a safety belt. Without waiting for her to find a place to stand, a few more birds rushed out from the dark. They attacked from all directions with their sharp cries. Their fast speed and black figures were like ghosts in the clouds. Gong Yimo was already dizzy. She didn't have much strength to take out the sword. She killed a few birds with great effort, but after seeing blood, more and more birds appeared. They even attacked the rope cleverly. In the chaos, Gong Yimo was surrounded by a flock of big black birds. She seemed to hear something breaking. Then her body suddenly fell. Her whole body tensed up. Oh no, the rope broke. The speed at which she fell was extremely fast, and in an instant, she had rushed out of the encirclement of the strange birds. If this continued, she would definitely be smashed to pieces. Gong Yimo took out her sword and stabbed it into the cliff. But the sword couldn't bear her weight and broke in an instant. Looking at the broken sword in her hand, was she going to die here? After a long night, daybreak arrived. Qiu Xingfeng moved impatiently. Grand Disciple, did Momo really say she could come up in a day? Why hasn't she come up yet? Gong Che sat on the edge of the cliff, motionless like a statue. Hearing this, he turned his head stiffly. His eyes were bloodshot. Qiu Xingfeng didn't notice and said worriedly, "She won't be in danger, right? Such a high cliff." He took a closer look and said timidly, "It's such a high cliff. Even I wouldn't dare to go down easily." He was at the 5th level of wind and nature. His words made Gong Che's face turn even uglier. His hand rubbed against the rough rock bit by bit. Blood flowed out from his wound again, but he was completely unaware. A day had passed. He had been waiting for a day. At this time, a large group of soldiers and horses suddenly came up the mountain. Qiu Xingfeng thought it was the enemy and immediately prepared for battle. However, he did not expect it to be Gong Dai's men. It turned out that one day was enough for the battle at the foot of the mountain to be settled. The great prince was the one behind the scenes. He thought that with the emperor and the crown prince dead, as the eldest son, he would be able to openly inherit the throne. He did not expect that Gong Dai would appear and disrupt all his plans. Then, the emperor and the crown prince did not die. Now that the entire imperial city had fallen into Gong Dai's hands and the first prince had fled in defeat, the only thing Gong Che needed to do was go back and pacify the people. When the emperor saw that things had calmed down, he could not hold on any longer and fainted. Now, only the crown prince could convince the masses. Therefore, Gong Dai sent people to invite him. Even though he was in power now, it was not the time to change the regime. He still needed Gong Che to take charge of the situation. Gong Che shook his head. His voice was extremely hoarse. Immerse is here. I want to wait for her. The person leading the group was Lo Chi. Hearing this, Lo Chi showed a troubled expression. But the situation now requires you. The situation? Everything he did was built on the foundation of being with Immerse. Without her, nothing would exist. Gong Che closed his eyes and did not speak again. Lo Chi had no choice but to retreat and report back. What was Gong Che thinking? He did not think of anything. He dared to jump down from here and die with Immerse. He was not afraid to jump down again. However, he promised Immerse to believe in her. He would wait. When Gong Yimo woke up, she did not know how long she had been unconscious for. At this time, she was in a dark place. She could see that the sky was bright, but she could not tell what time it was. She should have fallen directly to the 5th level. This was bad. The rope was broken, but she did not know where it was broken. How could she go up? Gong Che was probably waiting anxiously. She moved and suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. It turned out that her arm was broken. Every time she moved, she felt a piercing pain. Trembling, she climbed up and found a branch to stabilize her arm. Then she ate some food. At this time, she found a very large stone cave behind her. There was a faint light coming from inside. She curiously walked in. The light became brighter and brighter. Soon, she arrived at a very mysterious place. The walls were filled with white, glowing crystals. They were stacked layer by layer, making people feel like they were in a world of ice and snow. When she reached the bottom, she saw a person. Moreover, it was a woman. That woman should have died many years ago. However, Because of the unique climate here, she did not rot. Instead, she became a dried corpse. A tattered phoenix robe covered her body. Gong Yimo guessed her identity immediately. The Empress of the founding emperor and the first person to jump down the stairway to heaven. She did not die. Instead, she fell to the 5th level and finally died here. Yes, she died because her hair was white. It was obvious that she had lived for many years. Gong Yimo saw the place where she died. There were few lines of words in front of it. Gong Shuan destroyed my life. I would rather be cut off from the world than meet him again. Shuan was the founding emperor's courtesy name. How deep was the hatred that she would rather jump off the cliff to seek death? How deep was the hatred that she would rather live on the cliff than meet him again? It was said that the founding empress was highly skilled in martial arts. If she wanted to leave this place, it would not be difficult. Gong Yimo thought of the founding emperor who waited his whole life. The scene in front of her was really a tragedy. She sighed and was about to find a place to rest. However, she saw a lot of raised haystacks behind the founding empress. She curiously ran over to take a look and found that there were eggs buried in the haystacks. Thinking of the strange birds that attacked her in the clouds, Gong Yimo angrily picked up an egg and was about to roast it. However, at this moment, a sharp whistle was heard. A strange bird that was half the height of a person suddenly came out from the dark and stared at her fiercely. Following its cry, more and more strange birds flew in, and all of them looked unfriendly. Gong Yimo held the bird egg and retreated cautiously. "Don't come over, or I will smash it." As she said that, she made a gesture of wanting to throw the egg. All the birds took a step back, as if they were afraid. Gong Yimo remembered that the founding empress had 2 strange birds, one male and one female. They were very human-like. Could it be that they had reproduced in this nest? Who knew that, just as she thought of that, 2 strange birds suddenly flew out from the group of strange birds. Their heads were almost as tall as Gong Yimo's shoulders. Its body was pitch black, and its eyes shined like obsidian as it stared intently at Gong Yimo. Could it be that they were the Empress's birds? It had been a few hundred years, but they were still not dead. Chapter 871. The 2 big birds circled Gong Yimo, one on the left and one on the right. Gong Yimo thought for a moment and asked tentatively, "Are you the pets of the Yuan Empress?" The 2 birds chirped one after another. They were more peaceful and were obviously not as aggressive as the other birds. Gong Yimo was overjoyed when she saw that they seemed to understand her. "Your master's descendant is poisoned. He urgently needs the Muluojin as an antidote. If you can help me pick the Muluojin from the 6th level, I will return the egg to you." The 2 birds stared at her coldly, not knowing if they understood her. Gong Yimo felt a little silly to talk to 2 big birds, but she just wanted to try. Thinking of something, Gong Yimo suddenly walked to the Yuan Empress's side and kept her body in her space. Her action directly angered the big birds. They almost instantly made an offensive posture, but Gong Yimo waved her hand and the Empress's body appeared again. One of the strange birds tilted its head, not understanding what was going on. Gong Yimo said, "As long as you give me the Muluojin, which is a red flower as big as a human face, I will bring the Empress's body back for a proper burial." There was a misunderstanding between her and the founding emperor. That emperor died alone because of her. They should be together, right? The biggest black bird stared at Gong Yimo for a moment. Gong Yimo saw something in its eyes, and in the next second, it turned around and flew away. The remaining birds surrounded her. Gong Yimo once again kept the Empress's body in her space. Was this also considered her life-saving asset? To her surprise, she quickly caught a whiff of a strong floral fragrance. That bittersweet fragrance was one of a kind. The big bird chirped at her and then threw the flower on the ground. Gong Yimo picked it up like it was a treasure and said, "I will definitely bury her together with the Yuan Emperor." With that, she retreated step by step. "I hope you won't make things difficult for me." She had poison powder in her space. She hadn't thought about it before, but if they dared to attack her now, she would make them suffer. After carefully placing the eggs on the ground, Gong Yimo slowly retreated. When she realized that they did not chase after her, she heaved a sigh of relief. Gong Yimo took out the only rock climbing tools left in her space. She found the place where she fell and compared it to the one where she fell. She climbed up. She was lucky. After climbing for a while, she found a broken rope that she fell on before. With the lock as a foundation, it was much easier for her to climb up. For hours had passed, and she was almost at the 3rd level. At this height, Gong Che should be able to see her fireworks, right? Afraid that he would be worried, Gong Yimo took the time to set off a firework. The sound of fireworks exploding echoed in the mountain stream, as if announcing her return. Qiu Xingfeng was the first to hear it. He shook Gong Che twice in excitement. Grand disciple, did you hear that? These were Momo's fireworks. Only the fireworks made by her would have a sharp whistle. Did you hear that? She's telling us that she's safe. This was definitely the best news that Gong Che had heard in the past 2 days. His face exploded with a strange color. It was as if he was ecstatic, but also in disbelief. But before Gong Che could say anything, a group of people suddenly appeared and quickly surrounded them. Gong Che looked up. He didn't expect that the eldest brother who escaped from Gong Dai would appear here. The people that the eldest prince brought quickly fought with Qiu Xingfeng. Qiu Xingfeng saw the situation and quickly said to Gong Che, "Leave quickly." But Gong Che didn't leave. He watched as the eldest prince approached step by step. The wind blew, and his figure standing at the edge of the cliff was so proud. "Why don't you run?" The eldest prince revealed a sinister smile. "Or do you want to submit to me? As long as you are in my hands, Gong Dai will become that person who is not legitimate. Why don't you come with me?" Gong Che looked up at him. His long hair and blood-stained robes were proof that he had been through a bloody battle. His cracked lips moved as he spoke with a light smile. "When I was young, my martial arts were not as good as my brother's. Today, I might as well try again." Saying this, he slowly raised the sword in his hand. Over there, Qiu Xingfeng was fighting against several people. Over here, it was a duel between 2 people. The eldest prince smiled coldly. In his view, Gong Che had always been weak. He was injured and hadn't slept for a day and a night. How could he be his opponent? "Since you don't want to toast, then come drink a forfeit." Saying this, the eldest prince waved his sword and attacked Gong Che. The two exchanged blows at the edge of the cliff. It was an unspeakably thrilling scene. The eldest prince didn't expect Gong Che's martial arts to have improved so much. What he didn't expect was that even though the cliff wind was raging, Gong Che wasn't afraid at all. He didn't look at the cliff when he moved. As a result, he was in a passive position. The resistance from his hand grew stronger and stronger. The eldest prince retreated step by step until he stepped on a rock. "You didn't leave because you wanted to guard this rope?" The first prince panted and said, "Since you are disobedient, you can die together with the person tied to this rope." Saying this, he prepared to cut the rope to teach Gong Che a lesson. Who knew that when Gong Che saw this, he would rush over without a care and use his back to block it? The first prince wanted to withdraw, but it was too late. He wanted Gong Che as a person, but he didn't want him dead. In a moment of desperation, Qiu Xingfeng risked injury to pull him back. But when he pulled Gong Che away, the sword viciously chopped at the rope. The rope snapped and quickly shrunk toward the cliff. "No!" At that moment, Gong Che's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. His heart-wrenching cry shook the entire cross-sky stairway. He almost chopped off the eldest prince's head with a backhand swing of his sword. Then, without thinking, he rushed down the cliff. Qiu Xingfeng hurriedly hugged him. "Hey, you're crazy. That's a cliff. Immerse is down there." The rest of the people saw that the eldest prince had died and all ran away. Qiu Xingfeng grabbed Gong Che with both hands and refused to let go. Immerse is so powerful. She definitely won't die. Qiu Xingfeng didn't know the seriousness of the matter. He simply felt that there was nothing in this world that Immerse couldn't do. Gong Che's eyes were about to bleed. He turned back and asked Qiu Xingfeng word by word. Immerse climbed with a rope. Tell me that the rope broke. What will happen to her? Tell me. Xiao Xingfeng felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't watch Gong Che die. No matter what, you can't die. If you jump down, will MO come up? Thinking about it, he pouted and said, MO is so powerful. Maybe there will be a miracle. Miracle? Gong Che looked at the bottomless cliff. The rope was long gone. He couldn't see a miracle. The wind grew stronger, chilling his heart. He looked at the cliff and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. It was a miracle that he could be reborn. Maybe there really would be a miracle? Gong Che asked the heavens again and again. Would there be a miracle if he believed? Chapter 872. Because the rope was not that long, Gong Yimo could only reach the first rope when she climbed to the second layer. Gong Yimo was very anxious. She lay on the rock and reached for the last rope. As long as she got it, she could climb up in one breath. But at this moment, a huge snake head popped out from one side of the cave. Gong Yimo did not expect that the python that was supposed to be on the third layer would appear here. From this, it could be seen that the inside of the mountain should be connected. She dodged subconsciously. Her whole body hung on the rope and swayed backward. The python saw that it missed and stretched out more of its body to hook her. Gong Yimo hurriedly grabbed a protruding rock behind her and hung in the air with her back against the stone wall. She looked up at the last rope. As long as she could reach it and move faster, the python would not risk its life to fight with her. The python tried a few times but could not reach her, so it retreated. But its eyes kept staring at her, as if it was holding a grudge. Gong Yimo saw that it retreated and did not dare to stay for long. She quickly climbed up. She inched towards the rope bit by bit. She was so close to grabbing it. But at this moment, the stone wall in front of her suddenly broke. A hole suddenly appeared in the mountain. The python opened its bloody mouth to bite her. Gong Yimo was prepared. She grabbed the last rope with one hand and stabbed the python's shin with the other. She stabbed the python's weak point. The python kept moving forward due to inertia. In order to avoid its body, Gong Yimo did not care about her injured hand and desperately climbed up. The python fell down. She was just relieved when she felt that the rope in her hand was getting looser. With a cracking sound, the rope in her hand broke. Then Gong Yimo fell down quickly. Her eyes were full of unwillingness. Why did the rope break? She carefully avoided so many dangers. How could she die here in the end? Gong Che stood at the edge of the cliff. The anxiety and fear in his heart were getting heavier and heavier. Xiao Xingfeng was afraid that Gong Che would commit suicide, so he followed him closely. Who knew that Gong Che would suddenly kneel down? He faced the sky and bowed. The heavens above, the earth below. I, Gong Che, am crying here. 2 lifetimes of missing each other, 2 lifetimes of waiting. My feelings for Mo are as clear as day. I only hope that the heavens will take pity on me and return her to me. In this third life, I would rather die than miss this opportunity. He kowtowed 3 times, and blood flowed from his forehead. But the pain actually made him gradually sober up. Closing his eyes, he suddenly felt a strange sense of tranquility. He believed her. He really believed her. She would definitely come back, because Gong Yimo would never disappoint. Gong Che seemed to hear some strange cries in his ears. He opened his eyes as if he had sensed something. All he saw was a black cloud covering the top of his head and a strong wind blowing. When he looked closely, it was actually a flock of large black birds. They flapped their wings quickly. Below them, they were holding onto a very dispirited little person. Gong Yimo rubbed her eyes as she was not used to the sudden sunlight. She turned her head and saw Gong Che. She could not help but reveal a relaxed smile. Gong Che, she was in a sorry state, but she was smiling brightly. Are you happy to see me? Gong Che's throat was choked, and he could not say a word. The scene in front of him was unbelievable. One was kneeling at the edge of a cliff. The other was held in the air by a flock of birds. Just like that, their eyes met. If this was not a miracle, then what was? 5 years later, Yinding Mountain. Daoist Qiu. There's no regret in making a move. Gong Chung stopped Qiu Zhongchan's hand that was about to withdraw. He quickly placed a piece and then smiled proudly. Hey, thanks for letting me win. Changshi, who was at the side, quickly served fragrant tea and flattered, "Master is really amazing." Qiu Zhongchan frowned. "It doesn't count, it doesn't count. Let's start again." He snatched the teapot from Changshi's hand. "I say, as guests, can't you act like a guest? You have something good, and you don't even share it with the owner?" Gong Chung laughed heartily. "This is the best quality cloud hair. It's only a few taels a year. If you want to drink it, you can, but exchange it with something good." Qiu Zhongchan's face fell. He did not understand why Gong Chung, who was also an emperor, became so stingy after abdicating. He was also shrewd like a ghost. He had never won a game of chess against him. Gong Yimo heard the two old men's energetic voices from afar and giggled. "Husband, it seems that letting Imperial Father come here to recuperate was a wise decision. Imperial Father's complexion is much better than before." Gong Che saw her standing at the top of the hill, looking down at the pavilion below. He was frightened. "Moa, you're pregnant now. You can't stand in a dangerous place." Gong Yimo stuck out her tongue and skipped towards him. Gong Che was so frightened that he quickly threw away the herbs in his hand and went forward to hug her. "Don't jump. Don't jump. Mo, if you want to do anything, just say it. I'll carry you away." Gong Yimo giggled. "Why are you treating me like a porcelain doll? I'm in good health." As she said that, she stuck out her belly proudly with a proud face. Gong Che sighed, but the adoration in his eyes was substantial. Yes, you're in good health. Are you hungry? The kumquat jade snow soup that I made at noon should be ready. How about we go home and have some snacks?" Hearing that Gong Che was making delicious food again, Gong Yimo's eyes lit up and she drooled. "What are we waiting for? Let's go, let's go." As she said that, she pulled Gong Che and led the way. Gong Che followed behind and could not help but ask her to slow down. The sunset shone on the two, and it was indescribably comfortable. After walking for a while, Gong Yimo suddenly turned back to look at Gong Che. She saw that he was full of smiles and was also looking at her. At this time, he had shed all of his ostentatiousness and was wearing simple white clothes. His handsome face was like the best jade, slowly emitting light. It was not dazzling, but it made people unable to take their eyes off him. He was very happy. That kind of happiness made Gong Che different from the inside out. His eyes were like limpid autumn water. When he looked at someone, it was as if he could drown them in it. The current Dayu state was developing very quickly under Gong Dai's governance. Under Gong Che's suggestion, the four countries had already smoothly established trade relations. Everything was developing in a good direction. Gong Che squeezed Gong Yimo's hand tightly. Seeing that she was looking at him curiously, he suddenly smiled. Haven't you always wanted to travel to Jianghu?" Gong Yimo nodded, but her face fell very quickly. "But I'm pregnant." Gong Che smiled and tapped the tip of her nose. "When the child is born, let Imperial Father take care of it. He has nothing to do on Mount Yinding, so he can help us take care of the child." Gong Yimo's eyes were full of joy. "Then what about us?" Gong Che lowered his head and kissed her gently on the forehead, sighing softly. "We'll go wherever you want to go." Gong Yimo's eyes lit up. "Husband, you're too good." Gong Che's heart was as sweet as honey when he heard her praise. He lifted their interlocked hands and said slowly, "Don't worry about it. A life and death contract. Holding your hand, we'll grow old together. I'll be good to you for the rest of my life. What if you have a change of heart?" "Impossible." "What if you have a change of heart? Then I'll be your snack for the rest of my life as punishment." The setting sun elongated their shadows. Not far away, the Cold Star Villa was emitting faint smoke. The entire Mount Yinding was as beautiful as a paradise. Chapter 873. Inside the magnificent palace, a delicate-looking girl pushed away all the exquisite gifts in front of her and laid on the table. Today was her 18th birthday, but every birthday was the same. She was bored to death. "Coco, are you unhappy about your birthday?" When Gong Chi walked in, he saw his sister's unhappy expression. Her little face with a little baby fat was puffed up in anger, and her smooth skin made people want to poke it with their fingers. "Brother, Gong Coco showed an even more aggrieved expression. The palace is really too boring. I want to go out and play. Gong Qiu, who was dressed in a dragon robe, glared at her. You're playing again. Why don't you practice martial arts properly and break through the 9th level as soon as possible so that you can reunite with father and mother? Don't you want to? Gong Coco stuck out her tongue, and her eyes seemed to gather little stars as she looked over. Brother, do you think father and mother really broke through the void and became immortal? What's the world outside the void like? Gong Qiu patted her little head and said gently, if you want to know, work harder. You're already 18, but you're only at the 3rd level of wind and nature. Mother was already at the 9th level when she was your age. Speaking of this, he was very anxious because he was already at the 8th level. If his sister didn't work harder, he could only delay his search for father and mother indefinitely. Gong Coco stuck out her tongue. She also wanted to, but she learned everything very quickly. She could quickly understand the books left behind by mother and make many useful things. However, when it came to martial arts, her talent was limited. Seeing Gong Coco lower her head, Gong Qiu sighed. It's okay. Father and mother are doing well anyway. We just have to take care of ourselves. It was strange. Every year during the new year, the siblings would have the same dream. In the dream, their parents would talk to them in a very beautiful place. In the dream, their parents were still as beautiful and handsome as in their memories. Their fingers were interlocked and they leaned on each other. It was as if time could not erase the love between them. Time only made this relationship more fragrant, and happiness overflowed from their hearts to their faces. From their dreams, they found out that their parents had already comprehended the Tao of this world and stepped through the void. Now, they were very happy. They had achieved the immortality that all emperors dreamed of and had become immortal companions. Therefore, the brother and sister both looked forward to it. Both of them put in all their effort to practice martial arts, waiting for the day when they would meet again. Gong Coco gently hugged Gong Qiu's waist. Brother, it's okay. I've already grown up. When you reach the 9th level, you can go to mother and fight for a place. Otherwise, mother will only remember father and forget Coco after a long time. Gong Qiu smiled and patted her back. Silly girl, I'll always be waiting for you. Besides, comprehending Tao isn't a simple matter. You can't just reach the 9th level. Don't feel too burdened. Gong Coco nodded sullenly, but she made a decision in her heart. A month later, on the ocean, Gong Coco disguised herself and blended into the merchant ship, preparing to follow the merchant ship to the legendary island. She knew that her brother would not agree, but she had to go. She knew that, with her talent, she would never reach the 9th level in this lifetime. She did not want to be a burden to her brother, so she could only find a shortcut. The legendary island was her only hope. The direction was right, but after so long, she did not see any island at all. At night, there was a sudden gust of wind, lightning, and thunder. The ship she was on was thrown around by the waves. Gong Coco was about to vomit, so she ran to the deck to get some air. Unexpectedly, there was a little boy here. He seemed a little seasick, and his face was pale. At this time, it was too dangerous for the little boy to be alone on the deck. Gong Coco was about to remind him, but she did not expect a huge wave to come over and hit the little boy. Be careful. Gong Coco instinctively went forward to protect him. In the end, the little boy was pushed into a cabin by her, but she was swept into the sea by the waves. Sister. She heard the little boy's cry of alarm. Gong Coco wanted to tell him not to be afraid, because she knew how to swim, but she did not expect her leg to cramp at this time. The waves mercilessly drowned her again and again. Gong Coco felt terrified that she might die here. No, how could she die in a place like this? She still wanted to break through the void. She still wanted to see a different world. And her brother, how worried would her brother be about her? But her body could not stop sinking. She widened her eyes, and finally, after a huge wave hit her, she completely fainted. In her sleep, she did not feel suffocated. She seemed to see light, and then a pair of gentle hands pushed her. In a daze, she heard a pleasant female voice. Live well, don't worry about Qiu. Take care of yourself, my daughter. Mother? Her body was wrapped in a gentle force, and she kept rising. In the chaos, she seemed to see a figure falling, but she could not pull that person and could only let that force push her out of the water. Once out of the water, Gong Coco gasped for breath. She finally regained control of her body. She had almost died just now, but in the next second, she was confused because when she fell into the water, she was clearly in the sea with a thunderstorm. But when she came out, she was clearly surrounded by a lake, and there were many people dressed strangely on the shore. The moment she came out of the water, a short-haired girl ran over crying. Coco, are you okay? You scare me to death. Why were you in the water for so long? I thought something happened to you. Gong Coco was pulled up in a daze and covered with a towel. At this time, the director walked over, and he also heaved a sigh of relief. Hey girl, why did you scare people all of a sudden? It's just a scene of falling into the water. You went down and didn't come back up? Shally went down to look for you and said that he didn't see anyone. Did you hide on purpose? Gong Coco stared at him, her mind in a mess. What was going on? Wasn't she in the sea? How did she get into the lake all of a sudden? And this person seemed to be talking to her. Filming? She wasn't an opera singer. Seeing that Gong Coco was silent and her face was pale, the director was afraid that something would happen to her, so he mercifully let her go for now. All right. She's fine now. Let's move and film the next one. Then he glanced at Gong Coco and said to the assistant beside her, take her to rest for a while. Remember to tell me if you can still film today. Yes. Director, sorry to trouble you. The short-haired woman beside Gong Coco hurriedly bowed, looking fearful. Chapter 874. Gong Coco was baffled and didn't say a word. Then, she saw the fat man leave with a bunch of people. Gong Coco finally had a chance to figure out what had happened. If she guessed correctly, this was what her mother had secretly told her when she was young. Time travel. The difference was that her mother had traveled from modern times to ancient times, while she had traveled from ancient times to modern times. Had she traveled to the era her mother lived in? Feeling her inner strength, Gong Coco confirmed that she was in her own body. From what they had said, there was another person named Gong Coco here. When she was in the water, she vaguely saw a sinking figure. Could that be the Gong Coco of this world? Was she dead? And she looked exactly like the Gong Coco of this world. Was that why they had mistaken her for the Gong Coco of this world? Kiki, are you okay? The short-haired assistant took a while to compose herself. I told you not to drink the food Lulan gave you. She might have drugged you. Why did you stay in the water for so long? Are you feeling unwell? Gong Coco caught some important information and couldn't help but ask, why would Lulan want to harm me? The assistant glanced at her. Kiki, how could you forget? Back then, she auditioned for the role of the second female lead. Also, she is like President Jiang for a long time. You are President Jiang's wife. How could she not be jealous of you? Me? Gong Coco couldn't stay calm. I'm married. God knew that she was already the mistress of her husband in Dayu State. Everyone said that her brother would take care of her for the rest of her life. How could she be married here? The assistant looked at her strangely. Did something happen to you? Although your marriage is a secret and not many people know about it, and President Jiang doesn't like you very much, you can't have forgotten that you're married, right? Then, ignoring Gong Coco's confused expression, she continued, hurry, go change your clothes first. Don't catch a cold. You still have to film in the afternoon. If you don't shoot today and delay the progress, the director will be angry again. As he spoke, he hurriedly pushed Gong Coco to the nanny van. Gong Coco tried her best to take in everything around her. Then, she subconsciously sorted out her priorities. Her situation was a little complicated. Before she figured out what to do, she had to do what she had to do. The most important thing right now was to act. Luckily, she was playing the role of a princess who lived in troubled times and was not inferior to men. This is an ancient romance drama. For the sake of true love, the female and the male are together regardless of their country's enmity. She, on the other hand, was a female supporting character who deeply loved the male lead, but couldn't obtain him. In the end, she died for the male lead. If she acted well, she would attract a lot of fans. Of course, she didn't know about this, but her little assistant, Tion, told her. The scene in the afternoon happened to be the scene where the second female lead and the male lead met for the first time. The male lead saw injustice on the road and pulled out a knife to help. However, at this time, he had just come down the mountain and his martial arts were very bad. He failed to pull out the knife and was suppressed by the other party. Then, she appeared, took care of the mountain bandits in a few moves, and saved the male lead. It was very simple. Gon Coco felt that she was completely capable of doing the job. It would be best if she could quickly finish this scene and go back. She wanted to find a place to think about this important matter in her life. When the director heard that she was fine, he frowned and walked over to her. He said unhappily, "This afternoon scene is very important to you. You're playing the role of a princess. You must have a bearing. Although you know martial arts, you must be elegant. You can't give people the impression that you're a woman of the martial arts world. Moreover, your personality should be lively. This is the first time you've left the palace, and you're inexperienced in the world. You must act out that pure, lively, and noble feeling. Understand?" Gon Coco nodded casually. After changing her clothes, she frowned in discomfort. The material was too poor. Even the servants in her princess residence wore better clothes than this. The director saw that she didn't seem to be listening and couldn't help but shake his head. He had put in a lot of effort into this drama, and he wasn't careless with the casting. However, who asked this Madame Jiang to have such a powerful background? Since the great CEO Jiang had personally asked, how could he not give her a role? It was really a pity that he had to give up this second female lead role. It was originally a very good role. After Gon Coco came, she kept getting into trouble and often slowed down the progress. This made everyone very dissatisfied with her. The director couldn't help but think that if she got into trouble again, he would just directly delete her scenes. Thus, he said perfunctorily, "If there's anything you don't understand, go and look for Xiaoqing. After all, it's your scene together." He pointed at the male lead in this drama, Meng Xiaoqing, and then immediately went to set up the set. Gon Coco turned her head and saw Meng Xiaoqing talking to a cold-looking beauty. That girl should be the female lead, Shuewen. Although Gon Coco didn't want to disturb them, there were indeed many things she didn't understand. Thus, she still humbly asked for advice. Mother had said before that she should not be ashamed to ask for advice. Otherwise, it would be too late to complain when she made a mistake. Thus, she took the script and walked toward the two of them. She had already flipped through the script. Fortunately, she could understand the words of this era and had a photographic memory. No matter what, she could be calm and collected at any time. This allowed her to quickly get into character and shouldn't trouble others too much, who knew that the moment she approached, Meng Xiaoqing would frown. "Do you need something?" Gon Coco blinked. Why did she feel that he seemed to have a lot of opinions about her? She said softly, "I'm here to ask some questions. I'm not free." Meng Xiaoqing stepped forward and blocked Shuewen, as if she was some kind of scourge. "Go find someone else." Gon Coco was furious. When had she ever been treated like this? However, she didn't show it on her face and smiled even more sweetly. "All right, then I won't disturb you." With that, she turned and left. Shuewen frowned. "She seems to have not given up on you." Meng Xiaoqing frowned when he heard that. "I'm not interested in her." As he said that, he gave Shuewen his signature smile that could electrocute people to death. "Don't you know who I like?" Gon Coco didn't bother with him anymore. Instead, she found someone else to ask. She mainly asked about some very basic things, such as positioning, hanging wires, and so on. Although that person looked puzzled, she still seriously told Gon Coco. Gon Coco smiled sweetly at her. "Older sister, you're really a good person." Yu Chi smiled. "All right, go quickly. If there's anything you don't understand, just ask me." Gon Coco nodded. Suddenly, her ears twitched. People who practice martial arts were observant and alert. Although she was asking questions, her attention was always on the scene. As long as she paid attention, she could hear what was being said. At this moment, She heard someone mention her name. Moreover, it wasn't anything good. Chapter 875. Remember, don't make a mistake. Give the first wire to Gong Coco. If there's a mistake, it'll be a big deal. The person said and gave another person a card. After this is done, I'll give you the other half. Got it. The person who took the card nodded. Tell Sister Lou not to worry. Leave this to me. The person nodded and thought to himself, Gong Coco, since you can't drown to death, then you'll just have to fall and disfigure yourself. Let's see how you can continue acting. Gong Coco tilted her head when she heard this. It seemed like someone wanted to harm her. Interesting. So the drowning of the girl was also caused by someone else? That girl's body would probably be found very soon. Then, before that, she would help that girl vent her anger. She smiled very cutely, but those who knew her well knew that someone was going to be in big trouble. Soon, the scene of the male lead going down the mountain and seeing injustice on the road was over. It was her turn to appear. The director walked over to talk to the male lead. On the other side, someone ran over to put the wire on Gong Coco. Gong Coco looked at the ordinary-looking man who had his head lowered. When he turned around, she took out a stone that she had secretly prepared and threw it at his kneecap. That person screamed and knelt on the ground. Gong Coco took advantage of the fact that many people were surrounding them to secretly switch the wire. I'm fine. That person was afraid that the director would be unhappy, so he quickly got up. Enduring the pain, he continued to fasten Gong Coco's seatbelt. Gong Coco smiled and said, Are you okay? That person looked at Gong Coco's flower-like smile and subconsciously lowered his head. He missed a meaningful look in Gong Coco's eyes. She had hit him hard just now. For the next few days, this person could only walk with a limp. Soon, the director finished negotiating and the staff put the wire on Meng Xiaoqing again. The director looked at Gong Coco worriedly. In the end, he didn't say anything and shouted loudly. First encounter, round 1, time 1, action. Meng Xiaoqing quickly got into character. Dressed in white, he really had the temperament of a young chivalrous swordsman. It was just that he was now being forced into a fluster by the bandits and seemed to be in a difficult situation. At this moment, someone nudged Gong Coco. Gong Coco knew that it was time for her to appear. Her expression changed. She, who originally had a sweet appearance and a weak aura, seemed to have changed into another person in an instant. The ancient-style long dress was indescribably fitting on her. The way she held the sword, the aura around her, and every move she made was as smooth as flowing water. Not only was she powerful, but she also faintly exuded an air of nobility. No one would mistake her for a chivalrous woman of the Jianghu, but rather a noble child who had been taught by a martial arts master. Her stunning entrance quickly shocked everyone. Temperament was a difficult thing to describe, but at this moment, Gong Coco's temperament was that of an ancient nobleman. Meng Xiaoqing was originally supposed to reveal a surprised and stunned expression, but this time, he completely revealed his true feelings. After a fight scene, although they only exchanged a few words, his evaluation of Gong Coco's acting kept rising. This woman was not simple. When he acted with her, he actually felt like he was being suppressed. The director could not believe his eyes. He knew that the person recommended by President Jiang would not be a common person. So it turned out that Gong Coco had not shown her true abilities a few days ago. He did not expect her ability to be so stunning. Not only did she perfectly perform all the moves that were taught to her, but her movements when hanging from the wire were also so beautiful. It was really rare. After recording a long scene, the director did not have any intention of shouting cut, so the two of them could only continue acting according to the script. But at this moment, a situation suddenly occurred. Meng Xiaoqing, who was supposed to stab down from above and give the bandit leader a fatal blow, suddenly had his safety rope snapped. His entire body fell from mid-air. Everyone present let out a cry of surprise. Meng Xiaoqing was currently a popular young hunk. If he fell and was disfigured, how could they continue acting? Even Meng Xiaoqing's expression changed drastically. He subconsciously covered his face but such a high distance, he felt a chill in his heart and was prepared to be seriously injured. All of this happened in a split second. At this moment, Gong Coco suddenly swooped down. She stepped on a big tree and used the recoil to jump more than 2 meters high, pouncing towards Meng Xiaoqing. Not only did she catch him, but she also landed very steadily on her knees. The entire scene was like an exquisitely designed action blockbuster. Everyone held their breaths and then burst into a burst of exclamations. Meng Xiaoqing found himself in a warm embrace and was still in disbelief. The next second, he opened his eyes and found himself in a princess hug by Gong Coco. Most importantly, Gong Coco gave him a sweet smile. For a moment, her eyes seemed to be filled with countless little stars. "Are you okay?" As she said that, she tilted her head. It was simply too sweet. Tilted head kill. Meng Xiaoqing suddenly felt his heart beating extremely fast. This was the first time in his 20 years of life that he had lost control of his heart. Moreover, it was toward a woman he didn't like. Meng Xiaoqing's assistant hurried over and asked him about the situation. When he was put down, he was still a little dizzy. He didn't understand how he had been caught by Gong Coco and how he had escaped a calamity. The director looked as if he had survived a calamity. When he ran over to Gong Coco, his attitude towards her had taken a 180-degree turn. "Coco, thank you so much. If it wasn't for you, I really don't know what would have happened." As he said that, he said to Meng Xiaoqing, "Xiaoqing, go and rest. I will definitely give you an explanation for what happened today." Only then did Meng Xiaoqing nod. He could clearly feel that someone had tampered with the suppressive force earlier. How dare they touch him? Those people must have a death wish. Gong Coco calmly accepted everyone's praise. Yu Tian looked even more confused as she said, "Coco, when did you become so amazing? Could it be that when you meet someone you like, your potential really explodes?" Before she could finish her sentence, she covered her mouth with a horrified expression. Gong Coco saw that the others had already surrounded Meng Xiaoqing and then glanced at her. "When you follow me, there are some things you can say and some things you can't. If you say something wrong, there's no room for regret." Although she said it with a smile, Yu Tian felt a chill all over her body. She nodded and didn't dare to speak carelessly anymore. The scene had been shot very well, but Meng Xiaoqing had been frightened. The rest could only be res hot next time. Gong Coco heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like she could finally leave. It seemed like nothing had gone wrong today. She was indeed Daiyu State's smartest. No, the second smartest princess. The first was her mother. This was absolutely indisputable. On the way back, Gong Coco had been resting with her eyes closed. She was a little tired and couldn't think about the problem. Just then, Yu Tian spoke. "Coco, we've arrived at the Jiang residence. I won't be going in. I'll come and pick you up tomorrow." Gong Coco nodded and then got out of the car in confusion. Although it was the first time she had seen the large residence in front of her, it suited her taste very well. As soon as she walked in, a servant ran over and whispered to her, "Madam, young master's back." Chapter 876. Gong Coco raised her eyebrows. She just wanted to have a place to rest and think about the future. She didn't have any thoughts about her strange husband. The reason she came here was not only to stay overnight, but also to tell the victim's husband that the girl had been killed. She didn't say it on the set just now because the people there were complicated. If she said that the girl was dead on the spot, the person behind the scenes would know that he had succeeded. He would definitely destroy the evidence quickly and get rid of himself. But once she appeared, the person behind the scenes would think that the girl was not dead. He would definitely panic and be angry. Then she would tell the person close to her to go after the murderer. Those bad guys would definitely be caught off guard. Unfortunately, she spent a long time in the car to understand the mobile phone, but she couldn't find anyone close to her in her contact list. She didn't know that there was such a thing as 110 in this world, so she had to come here. No matter what, the girl's husband wouldn't just sit by and do nothing, right? When Jiang Shanka arrived at the dining room, he saw a sweet and lovely little girl eating. Her movements were very elegant and noble. Obviously, she had a good education, but because she was too hungry, she ate quickly. After all the dishes were served and all the servants left, she simply let go of her reserve and ate in big mouthfuls. Her cheeks were stuffed, and the feeling of fullness made her squint her eyes in satisfaction. She was like a cat with a noble pedigree, which made people want to trample on her. At that moment, Jiang Shanka, who was standing in the dark, smiled slightly. It was very interesting. He hadn't seen his little wife for a day, and she had changed into a different person. At first glance, they looked very similar, but in the end, they were still different. For example, the girl in front of him had skin as white as snow, which was not the effect of makeup. His previous wife's skin was not so white and delicate. As if she felt that someone was looking at her, Gong Coco's little ears moved slightly, and her big eyes looked over. At that moment, Jiang Shanka saw a flash of surprise, and annoyance in her big bright eyes. Finally, she pretended to be calm and put down her chopsticks, then elegantly wiped her mouth. "You are President Jiang?" She guessed that this person was the girl's husband. According to Yu Tian, they had a secret marriage, which meant that no one knew that they were married. And the girl's husband didn't seem to like her, but he couldn't ignore the hatred of killing his wife. Right? President Jiang? What kind of dress was that? Jiang Shanka raised his eyebrows playfully and sat opposite her. "What do you want to say?" Gong Coco was a little nervous. She didn't expect that there would be someone with such a strong aura in this world. It was just like when her brother was angry. However, she was the princess of Daiyu State. She would not embarrass herself. Therefore, she raised her chin and said arrogantly, "As you can see, although this Miss looks very similar to your wife, I'm not her. Today on set, she was poisoned and sunk into the water. I don't know how your world deals with this kind of thing, so I decided to keep it a secret and only told you. If I did anything wrong, I apologize to you. I hope that as her husband, you can find the culprit as soon as possible and give her justice." After she finished speaking, she thought about it for a while and felt that there was nothing wrong with it. However, the other party didn't say anything for a long time, which made her a little scared. Could it be that she was wrong? That girl's husband isn't reliable either? Unfortunately, she was an outsider and didn't know the rules of this world. If only she had found the bailiff from the beginning. She didn't trust anyone on set. Jiang Shanka's handsome face didn't change at all. It was as if her words were just a daily greeting. Only his fair and slender fingers tapped on the table. This was his habit when he was thinking. Gong Coco waited for a long time, but didn't hear his reply. She couldn't help but say unhappily, Did this miss not express myself clearly enough?" She didn't know why, but in front of this man, she couldn't help but become domineering. She even wanted to use her status to suppress his aura. There were a few times when she almost said the word "this miss." Jiang Shanka's deep black eyes flashed with a trace of smile. Even though the girl in front of him was domineering, there was an indescribable cuteness. It made people want to hold her in their arms and give her everything she wanted. How could he let such a cute little thing go? "Kiki, I don't understand what you mean." When he smiled, the coldness and alienation faded away. His handsome face was even more stunning. He blinked and said slowly, "You want to play the amnesia game?" "Sure. We have such a good relationship. I can cooperate with you." Gong Coco was stunned. I'm telling the truth. You'll understand when you find her corpse." Jiang Shanka raised his eyebrows slightly and said in a very doting manner, "Okay, as you wish." He then pressed the call bell on the table, and someone came in. Jiang Shanka whispered a few words in his ear, then looked helplessly at Gong Coco. "Is it okay now? I've sent someone to find the corpse. What else do you want to say?" Gong Coco frowned and looked at him awkwardly. Why did she feel that this man didn't believe her at all? Forget it. It was already dark, and she didn't have a place to stay. I'm not asking for anything in return. It's just that I have nowhere to go now. Do you want to take me in for a few days? Jiang Shanka saw her expression that said, "It's your honor to take me in," and the smile on his face deepened. He realized that this little fellow was really cute. There were very few people who dared to speak to him in such a disrespectful manner. It made him want to tease her. "Kiki, you and I are husband and wife. We should be living together. I already said that we're not husband and wife. Gone Coco was so angry that she put her hands on her hips. You're obviously lying. If you have a good relationship with her, how can you not tell who your wife is? Jiang Shanka said in a low voice. Are you blaming me for being too busy? His beautiful voice that was like a cello implied infinite tolerance. How about this? I'll come home more often in the future and get to know you better. Gone Coco's face was red with anger. She pointed her pale finger at him, but she didn't know what to say. You lecher. I'm not going to play with you anymore. With that said, she turned her head and got up to leave. She didn't want to stay here anymore, okay? Wait. Although he didn't want to stop, his voice seemed to have a magical power that made Gone Coco listen to him. Kiki, have you forgotten why you married me? Gone Coco turned around like an angry kitten. Just as she was about to say, I didn't marry you, Jiang Shanka spoke first. You married me because you have a lot of enemies. Chapter 877. Enemies? Gong Kiki smiled proudly. She swept her gaze to the side and smashed a wooden vase beside her with a single slap. The wooden vase shattered into pieces. Jiang Shanka's eyes widened. Gong Coco pretended to be relaxed as she clapped her hands and said, Did you see that? Even if I have a lot of enemies, even if I have the same face, I am not easy to bully. Is that so? Jiang Shanka suddenly pulled out a black object. Gong Coco had never seen that before. She looked at him curiously as he pointed at the wall beside her. A loud bang was heard. Gong Coco was finally unable to maintain her demeanor as she screamed and squatted down. Could it be a gun? Her heart was filled with panic. How could she forget that in her current world, there were not only mobile phones and cars, but also guns, cannons, and weapons that could destroy the world? What should she do? If she was discovered to be different and not of the same race, would she be silenced? Jiang Shanka saw that the little cutie had finally calmed down. He held the gun and said faintly, You are so strong. It seems like you're not Kiki. But you look so much like Kiki, there is something strange about it. Speak. Who are you? What is your purpose? As he said that, the black muzzle was pointed at her. Gong Coco remembered that before she could see the bullet's trace, the bullet had already entered the wall. With such speed, she was not confident that she could dodge it every time. Moreover, she was not sure if the dead girl really had a lot of enemies. She was also not sure if those enemies also had such powerful weapons. If because of her appearance, she suffered an unexpected calamity, then she would have died an unjust death. The most important thing was that the man in front of her had a gun in his hand. It was better for her to avoid him for the time being. The eldest princess knew when to yield and when not to. Just try to act spoiled like a brother. Thus, in an extremely short period of time, Gong Kiki's expression changed. She blinked her eyes. Her appearance was as innocent as it could be, and as adorable as it could be. In the end, she revealed a sweet smile and shamelessly said, I'm sorry. Husband, what are you doing? I was just joking with you. You scared me. Husband? Jiang Shanka found it interesting. Seeing her change her expression, he played along and said, Are you joking? But my wife doesn't have the strength to break the wooden frame easily. Gong Coco's smile froze for a moment, but she quickly revealed an aggrieved expression. Of course not. It's just that this frame has been in disrepair for a long time, and I'm not relaxed at all. Look, my hand is swollen. She wasn't wrong. As a noble princess, when had she ever done anything herself? Her hand must be swollen. Jiang Shanka saw that her hand was indeed swollen. She had pretended to be light before. When Gong Coco saw that the gun was still pointed at her, she took small steps forward and took out the trump card that she had used against her parents and brother. Tears welled up in her eyes as she bit her red lips and looked at Jiang Shanka. Why are you still pointing this at me? I already said that I was just joking with you. Jiang Shanka's heart suddenly jumped twice. Damn it! Didn't she know that when she looked at a man with this kind of expression, it would make a man want to ruthlessly ravage her? Jiang Shanka threw the gun on the table and pulled the pitiful little girl into his arms. This was the first time that she was so close to a man. Gong Coco's body tensed up. She had a bad idea in her mind. Now that the gun was on the table and this person was beside her, she only needed to reach out. Her hand was grabbed. Jiang Shanka saw that her white and tender wrist was red and swollen. His eyes flashed with a trace of pity, but his mouth maliciously threatened the little rabbit. Kiki, only I can protect you. Don't be willful in the future. You still want to run away from home? As long as you leave this door and say that you're not Jiang Shanka's wife, you'll be taken away by those people in the next second. They won't treat you as gently as I do. Jiang Shanka's words instantly extinguished Gong Coco's restless heart. She even thought that she should wait until this person found his wife's body. This way, everyone would know that the girl was already dead and she was just a passerby who looked like her. Thinking of this, she shamefully continued to act cute. My hand still hurts. Hubby, can you blow on it? Her sweet and tender voice made Jiang Shanka's breath tighten. His eyes darkened. He really held Gong Coco's hand and blew on it, then pinched it twice. He didn't know what those people were thinking. How could Gong Coco, who was born in the countryside, have such smooth and tender skin? In addition to her natural beauty, this skin also needed to be nourished with precious materials every day to be able to be so delicate. She was much prettier than Gong Coco. Her eyes were bigger, her eyelashes were longer, her nose was higher, and her mouth was smaller. Although the difference wasn't much, the difference wasn't small. Then there was the temperament that she inadvertently revealed. It was the dignity and arrogance that only a person in a high position could cultivate. Therefore, he didn't treat her as a secret agent or anything else from the beginning. Instead, he was even more curious about her. Ah, Gong Coco suddenly exclaimed because Jiang Shanka picked her up. What are you doing? Where are you taking me? She stared at Jiang Shanka very vigilantly, looking like she would immediately flee if anything went wrong. Jiang Shanka smiled deeply. I'm taking you to apply medicine. When he went upstairs, the people outside dared to come in. When they heard the gunshots earlier, they thought that the young master had killed the madam. Now, it seemed that she was fine. Moreover, the young master and madam's relationship seemed to have improved. It was really hard to understand. When they reached the bedroom, Gong Coco was very curious about the low-key luxurious decor. Although the things here weren't as exquisite as those in Dayu State, they still had a unique flavor. She still liked it. If only her brother could see it too. That way, he could learn the advanced technology here and go back to benefit the country. The poor little girl didn't realize how dangerous it was for her to be in the same room with a man. As expected, Jiang Shanka took the medicine and applied it on her. This medicine was not bad. Once applied, it didn't hurt anymore. Instead, it felt a little cooling. It was really good stuff. After applying the medicine, Jiang Shanka stood up. He saw that Gong Coco was trying to pretend to be normal, but she couldn't help but look around. He secretly found it funny. Those beautiful eyes were filled with curiosity. He couldn't help but rub her head. Gong Coco raised her head and looked at him accusingly. Only her brother could rub her head. Jiang Shanka held back his laughter and raised his eyebrows unhappily. What's wrong? We're husband and wife. You seem to dislike me? Gong Coco was shocked. She had almost forgotten that she was using someone else's identity. She stuck out her tongue embarrassedly and apologized to the girl in her heart. Then she said, No, I'm just a little tired. Jiang Shanka curled his lips slightly. Tired? Then go wash up and sleep. Chapter 878. Gong Coco nodded. She did want to take a bath, but there were no palace servants here to serve her. She had to do it herself. Thinking about it made her unhappy. She couldn't help but ask, You look rich, and you have a lot of servants in your family. Do you have servants who specialize in taking baths? Servants? Jiang Shanka said meaningfully, You're talking about the maid. Have you forgotten that I used to help you bathe in the past? We're husband and wife, and this is what a husband should do. Jiang Shanka lied without batting an eyelid. Although he said it naturally, the content of his words still shocked Gong Coco. The status of women in Dayu State was considered high in the four countries, but men still had many wives and concubines. In this place, a man could only marry one woman, and he was obligated to bathe his wife. This was a paradise for women, but she quickly pinched her thigh. What was she thinking? You're not his wife, so don't take advantage of him. His wife just died, and he's so pitiful. If Jiang Shanka knew that Gong Coco pitied him and couldn't bear to labor him, he wouldn't know if he would laugh or be annoyed. Gong Coco said seriously, "No need. You're the head of the household, and you're tired today. I'll bathe myself." Jiang Shanka saw that she didn't fall for his trap and raised his eyebrows slightly. "Since Kiki is taking care of me, then why don't you bathe me today?" Gong Coco widened her eyes. He wanted her, a princess, to bathe someone else? Did this person have a death wish? But she quickly remembered that she wasn't in Daiyu State. She was in an unfamiliar and dangerous place, and she had to rely on the man in front of her. Seeing her struggle, Jiang Shanka said slowly, "Kiki, you used to bathe me when I was tired. Why are you so hesitant today? Or are you not Kiki?" Gong Coco gritted her teeth. She was conflicted. Mother said that a gentleman wouldn't stand under a dangerous wall. She hadn't figured out the situation she was in, so it was best not to be impulsive. She had to bear with it and understand this world better. "You're not willing?" The slightly raised male voice carried a hint of threat. Gong Kiki had a bitter expression on her face. If she had known earlier, she would have asked him to help her wash up. Now, as a princess, she actually had to serve someone else. "But I'm really tired." She decided to make a final struggle. Jiang Shanka pretended to be conflicted and thought about it. "How about this, Kiki, you choose. Do you want to help me wash it? Or do you want me to help you wash it?" When Gong Yi and Gong Dai were together, Gong Coco was only 15 years old. Gong Qiyu was also a boy, so he had never taught his sister about gender. Therefore, Gong Coco was very lacking in knowledge about the relationship between men and women. In short, she had no sense of shame. Therefore, when Jiang Shanka asked her if she wanted to serve others or enjoy herself, she struggled for a long time before finally choosing to enjoy herself. When Jiang Shanka saw that she was about to go to the guillotine, he couldn't hold back the smile in his eyes and whispered in her ear, "Are you shy, Kiki?" Gong Coco shook her head. She just felt that she wasn't his wife, yet she had stolen his wife's treatment. That was a bit too much. Little did she know that her predecessor had never even seen Jiang Shanka's face a few times, let alone let Jiang Shanka serve her in the shower. The only reason he could lower himself like this was because of her. Dense steam filled the air. Gong Coco once again sighed at how advanced this world was. It was so convenient. No wonder there were no maids who specialized in serving baths. Before Gong Coco took off her clothes, she struggled in her heart. "Why don't I wash it myself? But if I say that, what if Jiang Shanka wants me to serve him instead?" Gong Coco silently swallowed those words and stretched out her hands. Jiang Shanka raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Gong Coco was puzzled. "What are you looking at? You're helping me bathe, but you're not helping me undress?" Today, Yu Tian had obediently helped her change her clothes. Jiang Shanka suddenly had an epiphany. This little girl, she really wanted him to help her undress? Looking at her natural appearance, could it be that every time she took a bath, she was served by someone else? Jiang Shanka slowly reached out and unbuttoned her coat bit by bit. Looking at her expression, she really didn't have any sense of shyness. There were only two explanations. First, her nature was wanton, and she was not reserved in front of strange men. Second, she lived in a very isolated place. Not only did she not receive any education in this area, but she was also not enlightened. When Jiang Shanka was unbuttoning her coat, he suddenly bent his finger and flicked Gong Coco's chest. Gong Coco instantly covered her chest and glared at him. "Why did you hit me?" Well, she was the second one. Her clothes were peeled off by a pair of magical hands. The girl stood in the bathroom, wearing only her underwear. That exquisite curve was enough to drive all men crazy. However, she didn't know it. Her body kept shaking, as if she was very uncomfortable. "What's wrong?" His voice became more seductive. His gaze fell on her body, and he found that her fair skin was full of faint red marks. Was she allergic to skin? Gone Coco didn't notice anything different in his voice at all. She pouted and said, "The material of the clothes here is so bad. I feel so uncomfortable wearing it." Jiang Shanka glanced at the clothes on the floor. Although they weren't good, they were definitely not bad. However, such clothes had caused many marks on her body. It could be seen that her skin was really delicate to the extreme. Thinking of this, Jiang Shanka's eyes darkened. "What material do you like? I'll get someone make a few more for you." Gone Coco blinked. She felt that this wasn't good. She wasn't his wife, but if she rejected him, would she have to wear clothes of this material? That was too much. She took advantage of him now, but she would return it in the future. Thus, she said rather embarrassedly, "Do you have cloud sky brocade here? If you really can't, cloud flower brocade is also fine." Jiang Shanka's eyes flashed. Gone Coco stuck out her tongue in annoyance. "Silk. The silk of the three slumber silkworm is fine." Although he didn't know much about fabrics, Jiang Shanka still knew that with the advancement of modern technology, the three slumber silkworm had long transformed into the four slumber silkworm. However, they could use medicine to turn the four slumber silkworm back to the three slumber silkworm, but it would take some time. He coaxed softly, "I'll prepare some silk clothes for you first. As for the three slumber silkworm you want, I'll prepare it. Take a shower first, and I'll apply some medicine for you later before you sleep. Okay?" Gone Coco nodded. She felt that this person was really good. Look at how gentle and understanding he was, and how he treated his wife. What Yu Tian said today definitely wasn't the truth. There must be a reason for their secret marriage. This was clearly a good man who loved and spoiled his wife. Gone Coco was just about to say some words of gratitude when she heard him say, "Do you need me to help you take off your underwear?" Chapter 879. Gone Coco said generously, "Take it off." Her straightforwardness made Jiang Shanka raise his eyebrows. Gone Coco saw him dilly-dallying and became impatient. She directly took off her clothes and entered the bathtub. Then she sighed comfortably. Jiang Shanka looked at the pitiful, pure, white underwear on the floor and suddenly felt his breathing quicken. This little girl was really not afraid of provoking fire. At this time, Gone Coco glanced at him and ordered as if it was a matter of course, "Massage my back. Also, do you have any beauty products here that can nourish the skin?" Speaking of this, Gone Coco was a little disgusted with this bathroom. In the past, there were 48 kinds of essence in her bathroom. There were some that had been dripped into the water beforehand, some that had been used after bathing, and some that had been used to nourish her body. Every part of her body had been nourished with different essences, and even her hair had been nourished with good quality jade nectar. If she didn't have those things here, how rough would she have become? Jiang Shanka's charming and gentle feeling in his heart was interrupted by this bothersome little vixen. He thought for a moment and pressed the call button on the side. "Housekeeper, bring some women's skincare products." He glanced at Gone Coco's satin-like hair and added, "And hair care products, I want all of them." With that, he released the call button. Not long after, a set of top-notch skincare products for rich ladies appeared at the bathroom door. In the past, the Jiang family did not have such things, but in the future they would. Smelling these fragrant things, Gone Coco was obviously in a good mood. Jiang Shanka saw that she was really lying motionless in the bathtub, waiting for him to serve her. He sighed in his heart and suppressed some of his restless desires. First, he carefully wiped her body. The skin that he touched was much better than he had imagined. It was white and smooth. Jiang Shanka thought in his heart. Compared to her, the baby's skin was nothing. Moreover, she had developed very well. It would be too much if she had more, and too little if she had less. His gaze went all the way down, and his eyes became more and more fiery. This heaven-sent beauty must belong to him. The only reason he had been holding back until now was because he was afraid of scaring the little cutie. Jiang Shanka looked at Gone Coco's defenseless face and thought to himself, "Giving her a bath is really an unbearable torture." But the other party's face was full of disdain, as if he didn't serve her well. Gong Coco really despised it. This man must be lying. The strength he used to serve her was sometimes light and sometimes heavy. It was obvious that it was his first time. How could he say that he often helped his wife bathe? Big liar. Although she treated people with sincerity, she was not easy to fool. Okay. However, she had been tormenting him for so long today, so she decided not to expose him for the time being. In order to avoid unnecessary complications, she had to endure and sleep first. Jiang Shanka didn't expect that the first time he served someone, he would be caught by the newly captured little cutie. If he knew that the little thing was so smart, he wouldn't have done that. Serving people was a very tiring thing. But what was even more tiring was applying skincare products for Gong Coco. Under Gong Coco's guidance from time to time, Jiang Shanka was already able to control his strength. At this time, Gong Coco was lying on the bed with her black hair spread out. Her expression was innocent, like a child who didn't know anything about the world. However, her appearance was exquisite and her body was naked. She was extremely seductive. The contrast between innocence and seduction made Jiang Shanka restless. Even his breathing became hot. However, he was very patient. When facing the world's most delicious food, he should slowly savor her beauty. If it wasn't for his trembling fingers on Gong Coco's back, others would really think that the great CEO was sexually indifferent. Raise your fingers and rub them with your palms. Gong Coco ordered with her eyes closed. Because the great CEO's fingers had thin calluses, she was very uncomfortable. Hearing this, the great CEO was stunned. He actually obediently raised his fingers and rubbed them with his palms. Gong Coco sighed comfortably. All this time, it was the palace maids who applied the perfume for her. The palace maid's hands had to be very soft to have the honor of being chosen. But gradually, Gong Coco found the beauty of the man's application. The woman's hands were soft, but warm. The man's hands were very hot, as if they were wrapped in a ball of fire. It made her feel like she was being burned by fire. It was hot, but also comfortable. After rubbing for a while, she actually felt that although the man's hands weren't soft, when the rough palm touched her skin, it would leave a tingling sensation. This feeling was very novel, and she couldn't help but moan. And so comfortable. Her tender voice was like a little feather, gently brushing Jiang Shanka's back. His Adam's apple quickly moved a few times, and he accidentally used a bit more strength. And Gong Coco couldn't help but moan in pain. There was a trace of pleasure in the pain, and the great CEO was completely ignited. This seductress could actually inadvertently seduce him to the point of losing his rationality. He suddenly flipped Gong Coco over and said in a hoarse voice, "Your back is done. I'll help you rub the front." Gong Coco was a little unhappy. She hadn't even shouted for him to stop, and this person was already so daring. But when she met Jiang Shanka's dangerous gaze, Gong Coco suppressed her reprimand. She had almost forgotten that this wasn't Dayu State. Gong Coco suddenly felt a little wronged. If she was still in Dayu State, she wouldn't have to be so careful. Jiang Shanka saw that the little cutie was originally fine, but suddenly felt wronged. That sad little look of hers made his heart clench. His rationality slightly broke free from his desire, and he asked, "What's wrong?" Perhaps it was because Jiang Shanka had bathed her and helped her apply the fragrance. So Gong Coco wasn't particularly repulsed by him. She immediately replied in a wronged manner. "I miss home. I want to go home." Go home. This time, Jiang Shanka was completely awake. He bent over, and his handsome face with distinct features moved closer. The coldness disappeared, and there was a hint of gentleness. His finger gently lifted Gong Coco's chin, and he asked in a low voice, "Why do you want to go home? Am I not good to you?" Gong Coco didn't know how to explain it to him, so she simply snuggled under the blanket and ignored him. Jiang Shanka thought for a while, and then he conveniently laid down beside her. Seeing that the blanket had curled up into a ball, he inexplicably patted it and said gently, "I'm good to you. I don't want to go home, okay?" When had the great CEO ever coaxed someone like this? However, Gong Coco ignored him. She hadn't forgotten that this person had lied to her. She only didn't bicker with him because he had served her so well. She didn't want to stay here. She wanted to go home. Only her brother was the man who treated her the best in the world. Jiang Shanka suddenly felt that he was a little helpless when it came to this little thing. This was new. The great CEO, who had always been victorious in the business world, was actually helpless when it came to a little girl. He gently patted the blanket in his arms. The little person under the blanket gave him a sense of distance. It seemed that he had to change his strategy. Chapter 880. Have you found anything? After coaxing Gong Coco to sleep, Jiang Shanka did not rest. Instead, he went to the study. In the study, the butler had been waiting for him for a long time. "Young master," Xiao Hung replied. He said that Madame's crew booked the entire Full Moon Lake for filming today. Other than the crew, no one else was there. Madame only became different after filming a scene where she fell into the water. Someone said that when Madame fell into the water, her expression was strange. It was as if she fell directly into the water. After falling into the water, she only got up half an hour later. Others thought that she drowned. Half an hour. Jiang Shanka tapped his fingers on the table. "Have you found the body?" "No, there is no body in the lake." Jiang Shanka smiled. They couldn't find the body. He ordered, "Continue to search. Find out who did this. Also, you have to remember that the current madam is the real madam. Understand?" "Understood." The butler lowered his head. He should be the second person besides Jiang Shanka who noticed that something was wrong with Gong Coco. "Go." After giving his orders, Jiang Shanka went to the bedroom. When he saw the little thing on the bed, his eyes couldn't help but soften. He didn't know why, but from the first time he saw her, he wanted to raise her like a princess. He had seen the original Gong Coco a few times. Although they looked similar, there was a big difference in all aspects. When she found him and wanted to marry him, her purpose was to use his name to scare and get rid of her family. The reason why he agreed was because her dead mother had saved his mother once. His mother begged him with great difficulty. Although he was unhappy, he still agreed. However, they only had a small wedding and did not register their marriage. Jiang Shanka didn't like the previous Gong Coco. It wasn't because she grew up in the countryside, but because she was too narrow-minded and had too many things on her mind. When she looked at people, her eyes were gloomy. The previous Gong Coco also didn't like Jiang Shanka. She liked Meng Xiaoqing and worked hard in the entertainment industry because of him. This contract marriage was considered respectful to each other. However, Jiang Shanka was quite nice to the old Gong Coco. She wanted to participate in the script that Meng Xiaoqing was in, so he sent her in. However, he did not expect that she would die for no reason. However, the old Gong Coco disappeared and a new Gong Coco appeared. Although it was hard to explain, Jiang Shanka admitted that he liked this arrangement. In the past, Gong Coco was just an insignificant person to him, but from now on, things were different. He pinched Gong Coco's sleeping face and smiled from the bottom of his heart. Only in a carefree environment could someone like her grow up. She was like a little person who was like a ray of light. Just a casual smile could drive away the darkness around him. This little guy was his. The next day, Gong Coco was woken up by the heat. It was early spring, and it was still a little cold. Why was it so hot? Soon, she found the problem. It was because there was a man hugging her from behind. The man's scorching body temperature baked her delicate body, telling her the situation she was in. She was no longer a princess who was held in the palm of someone's hand. In this unfamiliar place, she was just a homeless person. Gong Coco was sad for a little while, but she quickly pulled herself together. She had to think of a way to go back. If she couldn't go back, she would work hard to practice martial arts. The sooner she broke through the 9th level, the sooner she could comprehend the Tao. This way, she would have a chance to go to her mother's place. She believed that she and her brother would definitely meet again at her mother's place. With this thought, Gong Coco's depression was swept away, and she was full of energy again. She wanted to get up, but she felt the arm around her waist tighten. She turned to look at Jiang Shanka and saw that he was sleeping soundly. She had to say, This person was quite good-looking. She saw so many people at the theater yesterday, and many of them were quite good-looking. However, this person was better-looking than all of them. He was even better-looking than the famous Meng Xiaoqing. It was just that he looked stern and unsmiling. He should be in his 20s, right? She didn't know how old his children were. He was so rich, so he should have a lot of children. Gong Coco's thoughts ran wild. Feeling the little cutie staring at him, but not moving, Jiang Shanka opened his eyes. His eyes were extremely dark, like a ball of ink, as if it could suck in people's souls. It was a pair of dangerous eyes. What are you thinking about? When he just woke up, his voice had a trace of hoarseness, which grated on people's ears for no reason. Gong Coco shrunk her neck. Although it was her first time sleeping with someone, because Jiang Shanka's body was very warm, she was very comfortable and didn't feel any discomfort. Hearing him ask, she subconsciously told him what she was thinking. I'm thinking about how many children you have. After saying this, her eyes suddenly widened. Wait a minute. Her identity was now his wife. Which wife didn't know how many children her husband had? She was prepared to escape in the afternoon. Now that she exposed herself, the other party must have found out that she was fake. God, was he going to shoot her? He felt the little fellow's body suddenly tense up in his arms. Jiang Shanka laughed sullenly. The hand that was hugging Gong Coco tightened slightly. He felt that her expression was very cute. Almost forgot. Because I don't come back often, Kiki doesn't understand me. He found an excuse for Gong Coco. Gong Coco's body instantly relaxed. Jiang Shanka laughed and said in her ear, I don't have children. Why don't Kiki give birth to one for me? Gong Coco's eyes widened. You're so old, but you don't have children? That one sentence instantly shattered the warm and loving morning. Jiang Shanka couldn't help but stare at her and ask, Am I very old? He was only 27 years old. Gong Coco nodded without hesitation. Where we come from, people your age are. She paused for a while, suddenly annoyed at herself for being so stupid. What did she mean by where she came from? Seeing Gong Coco scrunch up her face again, Jiang Shanka couldn't help but laugh. Why was she so interesting? Her inner thoughts were so rich. It caused her expression to change constantly. But no matter how she changed, she was still very cute. I'm hungry. Gong Coco stiffly tried to change the topic. Their world was different from this world. In this world, men could only marry one wife. Wouldn't it be normal to have few or no children? Fortunately, Jiang Shanka didn't have any intention of harping on it. Gong Coco secretly sighed, but she felt that there was something hard poking her from behind. For some reason, Gong Coco instantly thought of the gun she saw last night. Oh no, she must have let it slip. Jiang Shanka suspected her, so he took out the gun. Feeling Gong Coco's body tense up again, Jiang Shanka nodded in satisfaction. This girl finally understood and knew how to be nervous and shy. He smiled and said in the most gentle voice in his life, I'm hungry too. Gong Coco became even more nervous. What did this person mean? He pointed a gun at her and told her that he was hungry. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.